Development Code. So, page 25, is that where we were, or 20? 20?
You were on page 20.
Okay, here
I'd like
comes
to
Chris.
bring a couple of items to your attention prior to that, however. For the record, this is a continuation of the workshop for, on the Economic Development Corridor chapter, and there's a memo at the beginning of the material that identifies where we are and so forth. I'd like to point out to you that there were some changes made by the commission in the material on pages 1 to 20 that are highlighted in yellow. There are some questions that still need to be resolved. Those are in red. And in the first 20 pages, there are no comments from Commissioner Phillips. I don't believe there are any comments from Commissioner Phillips in those pages. So I'd like to bring your attention to page 4 to start off with to make sure. In red on page 4, you'll see that this material requested by Chairman Leesmeyer at the hearing of the 10th, at your last meeting, you asked that staff find out what that was and put it in, so that's what we did. And it's highlighted in yellow. And on page 6, we have the City of Ontario information. I went to their website and I contacted them, and I must have misunderstood your instructions, because their standards for separations between facilities that sell alcohol are the state standards. Basically the same things that we use, and what we're proposing is actually more restrictive than their material. So if you could, and outside this meeting is perfectly fine.
I will find out.
That would be
you know.
fantastic. You provide it to me and we'll interject it in the right spot as draft material for review by the full commission. Then on page 14, if I can get to this correctly. On page 14, there were some warehouse and club stores. You asked for some kind of separation based on square footage. So within there, we separated it from below 100,000 and above 100,000, dealing with a complex or center. Because you did mention that in your review, you did mention that such facilities may have satellite shops and other things, and you wanted to look at the entire property, not just the primary building on that site, the warehouse on that site. So we broke it up into the two categories. So now you need to decide whether or not you want any kind of, whether it's permitted or conditionally permitted in the different sub-regions of the Economic Development Corridor. And in that same, on that same page, facilities where charitable donations are received, we broke it up into where they're received and processed, received, processed, and sold, so that you've got 3 different levels of activity going on. And hopefully it's relatively self-explanatory what received means. It's those little boxes that are at the corners and within parking lots of commercial centers and so forth. Received and processed is normally a building where where those boxes are brought, the contents of those boxes are brought to, and they're separated out, and stuff that's inappropriate will be thrown away, stuff that, yes, sir.
Okay, so you're talking about a box, but over at the Ralph's, behind Ralph's, they've got a tractor trailer that's parked back there. Are you considering that?
That would be the same as a receipt area, yes.
Okay.
Whatever the configuration is, where the function is only just to receive, no matter what it is that's being donated, that's what's referenced here. So if you have examples in your own experience that are more intense, such as that, then you would consider that in your decision as to whether it should be permitted or conditionally permitted. And in addition, the received, processed, and sold is typically where you've got a not only a shop that separates it out and processes some of it, but you have a open to the public, well, yes, it's retail sales, but on a very low level, very cost-wise low level of materials. So that was the separation that I came up with for that.
I have a question about that. Process, I have a charity that I give to, and they just give,
Uh-huh.
and I'm wondering, where would that fit in here?
Depends. when it's received by that facility, then they process it as far as this is simply trash and it needs to be put in a dumpster. This is unusable cloth material or paper material, and it goes in a dumpster that is sold by mass, by bulk, for recycling, versus something that is still has some usable value and then donated, given away from there. That would be in this receive and processed.
Okay, because I was thinking about the community cupboard. They give that food away. And I just take in like 5 or 10 bags of citrus, and they just separate it out and hand it out to anybody who wants it.
Right, and that's not
Would that be
sales.
considered a process, or?
That would be considered a process,
Okay,
because they receive it and do something with it.
okay.
So you can either wait for the end of my small presentation here and then go back to this page and 2 additional pages that I have comments on, or we can deal with it now. It's up to the commission. You want to decide which is permitted and not permitted, or do you want me to explain that on the next page, 15, you ask for separation between massage parlor and massage therapy? The therapy typically can be something where it's a licensed individual that either is in association with some other activity, such as a medical office or an independent shop, or someone that comes to a home or a business to do the massage therapy. And then finally, on page 17, private materials, yard, outdoor storage of privately owned materials, sorry, I didn't highlight it, I missed it, but it was something that you had questioned on. Private materials yard didn't have a definition before, so we put in language that said outdoor storage of privately owned materials not associated with a commercial activity. So if you happen to have a bulldozer that you no longer use in your business because you've retired or whatever, and you still have that bulldozer, it can be stored on that property. And we have had individuals that have basically had that kind of an explanation as to why they have a variety of stored material, equipment, machinery such as that, and so forth. And so we're trying to have a land use category that addresses that in our EDC. With that, that brings us up to where we ended our discussion on page 20. And I think it would be advantageous for you to deal with the questions on 14, 15, and 17 before we move on to page 20 and going through the rest of hopefully the rest of the chapter.
If the commission's okay with that, why don't we go ahead and get up to speed on those and then start on 20? Is everyone okay with that? Okay.
So what you've got is the warehouse and club store broken up between the 100,000 square feet and above and below. It's up to the commission as to whether 100,000 square feet is the appropriate number or some other number, and then whether they would be permitted or conditionally permitted.
So a typical Lowe's or something like that is how many square feet?
That would be, typically they're in a center and they would be well over 100,000 square feet.
100, okay.
Well
150-ish.
over 100,000 square feet.
And your Costco's are the same and bigger, right?
200,
Yes.
yeah, 150.
Yep.
Well, as we're looking at the warehouse club store under 50, and we got the Ps. What, are we comfortable with that, or what are your thoughts on that? So, what's an example of something under 50? Is that like not like a 99-cent store or anything like that?
Oh, you could have a 99-cent store under,
Right.
Brothers, big lots, they're about 46, 43.
right, the smaller Stater Brothers, right.
Yeah.
We'd have that vintage hardware store over there in Bradley.
Well, your standalone shops were addressed at your last meeting. The ones that you still had questions on were the complexes, were the centers, those that had not only the large primary activity, but satellite activities on the same property, and thus a larger a larger facility.
So, but this isn't distinguishing, well, it has standalone, okay, so these, okay, versus complex.
Right.
Complex is the shopping center,
Correct.
okay. So, standalones, yeah, I don't see personally any reason why they would not be permitted in any of the areas, yeah. And then 50,000 square foot or larger, I could see the need in the North Gate. Well, not really in the North Gate, only in the city center and maybe McCall.
Could you give us a definition again of a warehouse club store?
A definition of a warehouse
Yeah,
club store?
what classifies something as a warehouse/club store?
I guess you would call it a self-certified, self-classified. It's simply a facility that has, I don't know how to define that for you.
Well,
in
I mean,
this.
are we saying this is Costco and Sam's Club, or are we saying this is something beyond Costco and Sam's
No,
Club?
this is any facility that has retail sales operations that is more of a warehouse-oriented activity that, you know, just instead of having typical supermarket shelving and so forth, you have more warehouse appearance to the interior
Kind
of
of
the.
grocery outlet.
But what is Walmart?
Walmart is a large retail sales center. That would be, should be a specific retail sales, should be general retail sales.
You know, I think that one of the things about the club store is that you have a restricted clientele. You got to join that club to get in, sort of like a Costco or a Sam's Club.
Okay.
Yeah,
so-
and that is,
Well, that would handle half of it, but the warehouse portion
Well-
is,
when you go into a Costco, it looks like a warehouse.
So then we're also including then like Home Depot, Lowe's?
mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I don't see any need for a limitation on any of them except for the city center over 50,000. The city center, it's gonna be generally smaller stuff. We're not gonna,
Well, like we have the Concorian Theater,
yeah,
but that was at retail? Was
that's
that considered-
retail, that's not a warehouse, yeah.
Okay.
That's gonna be entertainment type of.
What if a warehouse wanted to come in there in that development?
Well,
That's community core. Do we want to limit that? I don't know.
I wouldn't want to see a Costco over there.
I'm just,
That's a specific plan also over in that area.
oh,
yeah.
it is?
Yeah.
Okay,
So those uses are outlined in the specific plan itself.
so, I mean, we want business to come.
So the only city center part that we're really talking about then is south of the Lowe's, right? And that stuff along the freeway and
I
across the
didn't bring
street?
my map.
Because everything to the west of Lowe's and everything is specific plan.
I'm pulling up a map now of all the EDC areas for you.
Yeah.
I left mine at home.
I had one in my book here. I don't have it with me. I believe that's correct. Everything south of where the Lowe's would be, and then that's the EDC portions in there.
Community,
That's what I'm thinking as well, but I'm waiting for the map to show up.
So if that's the case, we already do have over 50,000 there anyway, and that would still be appropriate. So maybe we should not have any conditional use permit. Although the conditional use permit doesn't stop it from happening, it just basically says we have to review the project and
Mm-hmm.
look at the effects.
Right, you evaluate the impacts.
Yeah, so it's not that it's not permitted.
and
Go ahead.
wasn't the community core, wasn't that, there was a development that came before us about a year ago? The same builder that's building the, right now that's building the Commerce Point 1 and 2, what was the name of that development?
That's the junction, and
Yeah, the
it's
junction,
located
is
in the
that-
southern gateway.
Okay, it's Southern
South
Gateway, so it's
Southern,
not
yeah.
community core, but I'm just wondering if we even need to limit, I mean, that's what we want in
Yeah.
and along the freeway, is that type of stuff.
That's true.
And besides, each permit would get evaluated on its own for appropriateness for the area.
Yeah,
So
That's
this, I mean, if they come up with a plan that works and fits within the zone, we can permit it.
yeah.
Yeah.
is gonna be reviewed anyway. So is everyone, commission, then consistent here on permit all the way across on warehouse club store under and over 50,000?
Yeah, that'll work for me.
Okay,
Mr. Folsom?
Well, okay.
So you're changing it from conditionally permitted to permitted?
that's what we're leaning towards, unless you unless Commissioner Folsom or you, Charles, can give us reasons not to.
I can give you about 6 reasons not to.
Okay,
You want to have the opportunity through the conditional use permit process to evaluate the impacts that that particular use and that particular design will have upon the surrounding properties. Because you could have a 400,000 square foot center under that category, because it's more than 50,000 square feet, that by its nature has a lot of trucks pulling into the back of the facility that are adjacent to residential properties or other more sensitive commercial uses, lower intensity commercial uses, or senior facilities or things of that sort. You want to make sure that you've had the opportunity to have a thorough environmental review of the property, whereas if it's permitted outright, then although you do have some rights for the environmental review, you don't give the property owner or the applicant the concept that they're going to need a thorough environmental review. And we have really sensitive environmental people in this community, so they're going to want to have a higher opportunity for that review. I can go on, but I think I've
Okay.
made my point.
CUP all the way across there?
yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Did you have some
This is
comments,
your-
Commissioner
No,
Folsom?
basically that, but, I mean, when it's over 100,000, I mean, you're probably looking at several hundred thousand, if it's part of a larger complex with being that, so I
Well-
think that this body would want to look at that.
Okay, well then, so we're unanimous then on CUP all the way across on the greater than 50,000 and permitted on the under 50 then, right? Now, that's on the standalone. Now, on the complex, under 100,000 and over 100,000. I think obviously on the over 100,000, we're going to want CUP across the line. Now, under the 100,000,
Keep it at CUP there.
keep it at,
Yeah.
Keep it.
Then would there be a distinction?
well, if they're both CUP, then it really doesn't make a difference.
Right.
Okay, so are we consistent then, Commission, on no matter what a complex center will be, no matter what size, it'll be conditional use permit?
Right.
Are we okay with that, Commissioner Kerwin?
Yes.
So then,
So we'll
CUP.
modify that so that it removes the over and under and make it straight across.
Now, this would be overridden if, say the property south of Lowe's, they come in with another specific plan like they did at the town center, then that would have to be approved by us and everything, and that would override this.
Correct. It would be a development code amendment that would apply, it would have to be consistent with the general plan, as this would be, and it would apply new standards for a specified area that both the commission and council would have to agree to.
Which is actually a higher degree of scrutiny than.
Correct. It's the next level up from the development
Okay.
code.
Okay, so let's go down then to facilities where charitable donations are received in process, processed and sold. Yes, Commissioner Folsom?
I think they all should be CUPs, just all one regardless, because if you've got, like the truck that I was referencing behind Ralph's, I think that you want to make sure, and maybe, I don't know if they would have to come in and get permits anyway, just to drop a tractor back there, or the trailer.
Salvation Army?
Yeah, exactly.
What is the process?
Because I'd be
then?
concerned about the circulation and all.
Yeah, what's the requirement currently?
I'd have to defer to Lisa on that one.
Does that include also behind Ralph's, there's a recyclable?
Nope.
That's
No,
separate?
that's separate. That's under a different state code.
Okay.
For Salvation Army or a thrift store, if they were going to set up an area to receive donations in the back of the store, it should have been approved under the plot plan. If it's something they're adding at a later time, we'd review it. We don't issue permits for the trailers where they collect the items, so.
What about those standalone, Salvation Army has one there, and there's other ones around the city, those boxes where you can 24 hours a day drop stuff in?
Those aren't currently addressed in our zoning code. We have told people in the past that they should submit a minor plot plan so that we can look at how they might be impacting parking or landscaping. But we haven't received any applications for those mobile donation bins.
Has the city had any code enforcement, crime, or other problems with any of those donation boxes?
Yes.
Yeah,
What kind of problems have you had?
People break into them, they scatter stuff all over
Yeah,
the place.
that's what
they
I've seen.
Steal
a
from,
mess.
from donated material.
Yeah.
Mostly it's because of the nuisance of a mess that's made in those facilities.
People will overfill them or
Yes.
just leave bags in front of them. They do take up parking.
So, but that's not necessarily, are they covered by this received here? or
What,
no?
what you may want to do, if I understand the suggestion, we strike receive, received and process, make everything a conditional use permit, but put a footnote in that if it's a box that takes up no more than 200 square feet and does not interfere with parking, that it would be allowed by right. Because then you could have them put in various places in the community, and we may even put commercial, and allow it to be just placed there.
Well, yeah, we don't, a lot of these things are fundraisers, and they don't gotta have a lot of money, and we don't wanna have to say you come and pay a $5,000
Right.
CUP for a box.
Correct.
But the thought may be put forward for some kind of code enforcement code to regulate them, because you do see them scattered around, and they're kinda ugly,
Well,
so.
And again, instead of, we could put a note here, and I can come back to you with several criteria that would apply to that note, so that
It
it
needs
doesn't take
to-
up parking, it's got to have a setback from the
needs
street,
to be
it's got to be
addressed.
cleaned up weekly or daily. It's, there are half a dozen things that we could put on there that would make it so it minimizes the impact, but again, is available without a tremendous cost to the charitable
I would
organization.
agree with that, with the rest of the commission.
I would recommend you add. I'd recommend that you also add that you gotta get the property owner's permission to stick those boxes out there.
Lisa, did you have a?
We may want to do a separate ordinance to address those
That's what I'm
donation
thinking.
bins and
Yeah.
leave it out of EDC for now and do it completely separate.
Yeah, that'll work.
Well, then we get back to calling them, making them all CUPs until we have that new ordinance in place.
Sure, sure.
Then you're
Okay.
covered until that is available. Correct.
And charitable is misspelled.
Again? Thank you.
Bob, do you have a question?
I would just saying, if, in my opinion, and not just for what it's worth, in the EDC, and this is an important zone to the city, is maybe really look at just actually prohibiting some of the boxes altogether, those donation boxes. They may not be appropriate in the zone, particularly in certain areas, I would say along the I-15 area, which would be our major. If there's a way that we can do that, that's something that I would suggest that we look at to eliminate them in certain areas if we can do that. It may be
You-
more appropriate
you
along
could-
the McCall area, but we need to look at that.
You could prohibit him, just simply make it a footnote in the, in this. And again,
I think it should be
what-
prohibited.
Well, the reason is, the places where these things get the most donations and things I would think would be the most visited, like the Lowe's and all those kind of things. Are you saying that as an economic driver, it's not good for the area? Is that your experience? You don't
Well,
want them there?
That's, in my opinion, yeah, from the standpoint of what we were talking about, the mess, sometimes when people leave there, they go through it.
It's your city, yeah.
It's not attractive in terms of the appearance in a center, in my opinion, in looking at from a retail area. I don't think we'd want to see something like that in a fairly nice or a retail area of this. And some of them do have them, though. They do have them, I've seen them in Lowe's parking lots as well. And it depends also, I think, on who's putting them out there also. And then that, talking about how do we regulate and permit that, then that becomes another issue. Because there are legitimate organizations and charities and so on, and I think there's others that just put them out there to collect and see what they get as well. So
Yeah.
it's probably needs some further scrutiny in
Well, isn't
some
that
way.
something that the property owner would want to manage themselves? Like, the countryside marketplace, if you've got a bin out there that's overflowing with used clothes, they run a nice facility over there. It's a nice property. I would think they would be all over it if.
Look at the erosion on the corner of Newport and Hahn in front of the marketplace and tell me if they care about quality.
That's true.
They've been trying to fix that for
So how about, was the commission leaning towards prohibiting it until a specific ordinance is created?
Yeah, I would like to take Bob's recommendation on that.
Prohibiting standalone unmanned donation centers?
Boxes or
Boxes.
whatever.
Not necessarily prohibiting them,
Containers.
but they're under a CUP. They'd have to apply for a CUP until another ordinance.
So where are we going, prohibit or CUP?
Well, you can have both. Because the notation is received, processed, and sold, you can have conditional use permits, and then a note, no standalone boxes. And then when we get to the new chapter, we can modify that language.
Okay.
Okay.
So by standalone, it would be unmanned. Because if it was just a collection facility, if they have somebody standing out there monitoring it, I don't mind that.
Well, even though sometimes it depends on who's.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, I
I've
think
had a
that,
few
I
of
think
those.
I'll defer to the suggestion.
Looks like you added some wording there right away on the equipment rental, adjacent to the freeway right of way.
That was language the commission asked for.
Okay.
All the yellow in this is commission-directed language.
Okay, page 15, massage parlor versus therapy.
Correct.
So your therapy would be your
Individually
massage envy
licensed.
kind of thing.
Right.
Okay, and then your massage parlor is defined as, no, I'm not talking about, well, no, we have to define it because there are legitimate massage places, massage envy, and then there's not so legitimate ones.
And those are massage therapy places,
Yeah, but,
the sale ones.
Well,
I don't know.
a massage parlor is a specific location where the primary commercial activity occurring within that facility is massage therapy. A massage therapy or massage therapist is a location where not necessarily that activity is taking place, but it could be an office where therapists are sent off to locations. So that would be what I think would be the distinction between the two as far as a
So then
Commercial
Massage Envy, the chain, is a massage parlor?
correct
I don't,
in
Can we
under the
change that
definition I
name?
just gave.
can we,
massage
Can we-
establishment, massage business, massage entity, commercial entity, I don't know.
Parlor is the best thing because people understand it.
And
Where would you put an acupuncture because they do
but massage parlors can, in people's minds, can be many different interpretations.
correct, and it's that difficulty that would, that it would be that situation that would be the difficulty at the public counter in order to try and enforce it. Parlor is a common term that has grown over time to mean the kind of facility that I just described. And if you call it something else, then somebody might come rolling in, and legitimate massage envy may want to say, I want to open up that kind of facility. And if you've prohibited it, or if you've defined it with some other word, well, we're not that, and so it wouldn't be a listed use and wouldn't be permitted.
You know, it'd be nice to it would be nice to see like a massage envy. It would like to see what their wording is that they use when they go into a city. It would be nice to kind of know that.
Don't forget, we have a footnote. We're going to have an entire chapter that defines these things and
Okay.
works on these things.
Okay.
So,
All right.
So in the North Gate, we're prohibiting it because that's mostly commercial, industrial kind of stuff. In McCall, we're conditional, the rest of the areas were conditional. Now massage therapy, I could see it being prohibited in the North Gate and permitted in the others. If your definition of massage therapy is that the primary use is not massage or it's just to send them out, then I don't see why we have any restrictions on it. Does anyone agree or disagree?
I think it should mirror physical therapy, which is on the bottom of the page 14.
Permitted across, okay.
Yep.
If you're gonna, I mean, they're the same
Yeah, that's
purpose
true.
and service.
That's true.
And often offered together. Often massage is part of physical therapy.
Yeah.
So there's no reason why they should be inconsistent.
Okay, so are we P all the way across there?
I'm still worried about the acupuncture.
That would be a medical, that would be a medical, you have to be licensed for that activity, and that would be, in my opinion, more of a medical operation, a medical procedure, and would fall under medical office.
Okay.
Commissioner Folsom, did you have a comment or question? No. No? Okay. Let's move on then to page 17, private materials yard. That's the guy who has the dozer and his equipment from his retired company, or he's just storing stuff.
Well, we had an example of this, right when I got on the commission, all of a sudden, a construction yard showed up right here as you got on Newport, along the 215, and there's a house there. And all of a sudden, it turned into a huge construction yard, and,
Newport in the 215?
yeah,
Where?
yeah, it's right next to the storage, kind of down this way of the storage facility. It's in between.
In
And
between
all of a
McCall
sudden-
and Newport?
Between Newport and Scott, in that area.
Oh.
All of a sudden, this huge yard just appeared with all this equipment laying out there, and it looked really,
Now, this would be completely different than a construction staging area, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, this is simply where someone has material, like the illustration of the,
want that along the
retired individual or person that's given up their business. We had in town a individual that had on a residential property a great deal of earth-moving equipment that his business had gone belly up for a while, and he needed some time either for the economy to turn around or something, so he was storing that equipment on the residential property, and there was nothing in the code to address how to deal with it. And so when the commission asked for whatever it was you asked for, this is in essence what staff thought you were asking for, so we're trying to make it clear that you can't store your unused bulldozer in your backyard.
Well, again, this is just for the EDC, so I don't see why we would permit it. Now,
Right.
in other rural areas, we should.
Yeah, that's an opportunity
But
for
I
the
don't see
commission.
any need for it in the EDC. The only EDC area that has any housing is immediately west of the town center.
Well, it's not just housing, it could be a vacant piece of property,
Yeah, yeah.
because you may have in the north area, vacant land that is near industrial activities, and someone may think, well, it's next to this industrial plant, I can put things out there. No,
I just, oh. Were yours blinking or mine?
Oh, no, go ahead.
It's,
Oh, that was mine.
go ahead.
Oh, I like to see these things be consistent, and I find this particular issue to be analogous with outdoor motor vehicle, trailer, or boat storage, which is on page 9.
well, this, in my understanding.
So if you're talking about earth movers and things like that, those are vehicles.
Yeah, but it's the intensity of that.
Well,
But
this,
no,
I mean,
yeah, you are absolutely right. I could have 7 boats that I no longer use for my boat rental business and be storing them in my backyard or on a 5-acre piece of property that I own. Correct.
so the point that I'm trying to make is on page 9, under motor vehicle, trailer, or boat storage, outdoor storage is prohibited all across the board. So I don't see why that would be any different in this particular private materials yard type of thing. If we're talking about now, if you're talking about building materials, like there's a guy who has a house on the intersection of Holland and Murrieta Road, where he's got this giant stack of railroad ties out front that says "not for sale" on them. It's a huge stack of railroad. It's on the way up to the high school up over there, and he's got a school bus out in the front. And again, the railroad ties stick in my mind because the sign on them says "not for sale." Couldn't be any clearer that it's not associated with a commercial activity. And something like that would fall under materials, but the school bus or earth movers or bulldozers, things like that, I think would fall under that outdoor vehicle storage, which we've prohibited all the way across the board. So I don't see why.
I agree.
I don't see why prohibiting it would be inconsistent.
I agree.
Mr. Folsom, did you have a
Agreed.
comment? Okay. So we're prohibited across the board. Okay.
And of course, we may find an overlap in this issue with our issue tonight regarding the home business issue, but we can deal, I guess, if the business is active, then it would be associated with a commercial activity.
And this is the EDC too.
Right.
I guess the only clarification I would want is that outdoor storage of privately owned materials not associated with a commercial activity or construction staging.
I guess that would still be commercial activity, right? Construction staging?
Right.
Is that,
Correct, because we don't want to exempt, because then we would end up with what we have, construction materials, construction yards, where people are storing,
right, no, I wanted to clear that if it's construction staging, that you can do it, at least temporarily.
Oh, if somebody's building a deck or something like that.
that's a material storage yard. No, that's wholesale.
I mean, if they're working here on the freeway, they need a construction staging area.
Oh, there's a construction staging area
Yeah.
right now. I don't know what
So
it's for.
I wouldn't want that to be prohibited necessarily.
Menifee Lakes Plaza is a construction.
Right, on that same page, just above that, is the contractor storage yard. And that would be where what
Okay.
you're describing would be located.
Right
Okay.
here.
Yep.
There's a construction staging area right here.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, so,
At this point, we appear to be completed with the table, and so you're on page 20, and consistent with what you have, the way you've addressed this in the past, is that you ask whether anybody's got any questions or problems on page 20, 21, 22, and if you do, you discuss it. If you don't, you move on to the next page.
okay. I have one initial question on this table where it says minimum lot area. Is that net or gross?
The minimum lot area, typically it's a net, not gross.
Okay, because I think
We
we
may
need
want to put
we
that
need
in.
to put, we need to put net in there because that's where you get density problems and you get unclarification if there's right-of-ways or setbacks or easements and things, and then, yeah, so I think, so we need to add the word net there to minimum lot area.
Well, if you're going to include easements as not included in the net, you need to be specific on that too, because you've got utility easements that run through properties to service power lines or power boxes and water lines and things of that
Well,
sort.
there's service and functional easements, and then there's physical easements. In other words, Edison may have an easement through the corner of this property here. Doesn't mean that you can't build on it, right? It just means that they have the right to go on that property in that section
No,
anytime
there
they
would
want.
typically be, on the utility easements, there typically be restrictions that would prohibit you from either putting a structure or even parking, landscaping, and so forth. If your concern is to simply strike out public right-of-way, we put public right-of-way as the exclusion and make it clear.
Would you say that is an issue? What I'm more looking at is when you develop say a 10-acre parcel, you're going to lose so much to streets, you're going to lose so much to sidewalks, you're going to lose so much to maybe there's a 1 acre that's a riparian area and therefore you can't build on it, therefore your density is much higher because you don't have as much useful property.
Right.
That's
but
really
that-
what I'm looking
But
at.
that riparian area, the dedicated rights-of-way are excluded. The riparian areas, or areas that the city, through the review process, defines as not being able to be built upon, are still included in the density calculations.
Okay.
So right-of-way issue is usually what people are trying to exclude when they talk about the minimum areas.
So does the commission agree and have any comments on my purposes of bringing that in? So,
As a fairly new commissioner, I'm not familiar with the difference between net and gross lot size. If you could just let me know what we're using for the definition.
Gross is typically the total lot area that's under recordation, and net would be that same lot area less public rights-of-way easements or other easements that exclude use.
on a housing group, if you had a 10-acre lot and you're gonna put 5 houses on it, you're gonna lose some area to street. And maybe there's a stream running through here, or it's a big mountain, so you really lose that corner. So instead of having a density of 12 to 15, the real density is gonna be 19 because you're cramming the same amount of houses on less property.
Right,
And
I
so the
understand.
same issue with the the
Do we need to
commercial.
worry about that in the ECD?
I don't know, do we? Is it an issue? Has that been an issue?
Since you're going to have mixed uses, and you're going to have residential, yes, it will be something that will come in, because if you are talking about the densities that you are talking here, if you take out a roadway, and that roadway, even if it's 18 feet for 20 acres, that could be 4, 5, 10 residential units. So yes, it does make a difference.
So why don't we say net, which includes right-of-ways, right? Isn't that what you?
Excludes right-of-ways.
Excludes right-of-ways, okay.
Public rights of way?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Because then you can still have your easements, and there may be situations where you have private access roads from, or going through your commercial area into your mixed-use residential portions.
Does anyone else have any other questions on page 20? Okay. Page 21.
On 21, what caught my eye, so I'd like Charles to explain, maximum building height, 100 feet in the north gate.
Mm-hmm.
How many
For-
stories is that? Yeah.
Well,
That kind
typically,
of scared
it's,
me.
since it's in the primarily more industrial-oriented, you're going to have various buildings that need a height in order to do that industrial activity. And that's where that height comes from.
So what is 100 feet? How many stories is 100?
It's 10 stories. Typically would be considered a 10-story structure. But 100 feet isn't actually as tall in a large industrial building as you may think.
How tall
vi-
is the Home Depot there across the street on the north gate? You know, the fascia of it, you got Wingco and you got Home Depot. How tall is the top of the cornice at the front, the fascia?
Probably around 50 feet.
Right,
50
50,
feet.
54 feet, yeah. And that, when you step back to the street, that really isn't that tall of a view. And for industrial purposes, if you want to allow certain industrial activities to go on, which is the focus of that area, you're going to want to have sufficient height to deal with it.
And I'm trying to get this in my mind. I know, are you familiar with, it used to be Abbott in Temecula, that building? I like visually,
That's like 5 or 6 stories?
I'd like to know how tall that, because that's a pretty tall
Yeah.
building.
So that's like 6 or 7 stories, yeah. And they've got an even bigger one up the hill behind the dealership there, which is, again, taller.
Well, and don't forget, in the area and with the uses that are allowed there, you probably are not going to have something that is a small footprint, tall structure. It's going to be a large footprint, a portion of which is a tall structure. And so by that mass, it's going to diminish the appearance of that 100 feet.
So in the city center, you
Community
got
report.
75, and then in Southgate, 75.
And why we have 75 in the city center is because we anticipate mixed uses, where you're going to have, hopefully,
Community
multi-story
cores and so on.
residential on top of commercial, office, parking, and so forth. It's going to give you the advantage to, if you're going to go above 3 stories and pay for an elevator, you might as well put a number of stories in there in order to spread that cost out. And because of the area we're in, you get a few stories higher up, you're going to get better views, you're going to get a better price for those individual units and so forth. So there is a point behind allowing height in order to encourage that mixed-use development.
We had a big debate over the town center and the heights, and
Talking about the hotel?
down across from Lowe's, the town center
Oh,
there,
there?
they had the big specific plan. I mean, it was going back and forth and getting pretty heated. And I think they ended up approving 4-story, was it not? What was the height on that, Lisa?
50 feet.
50 feet, okay, so we're gonna have 50 feet there. But on the community core, we're saying 75, and then, so I could see it in Southgate, I could see it in Northgate. What kind of, commercial entity or retail entity would have to come into community core that would require 75 feet?
Courthouse?
Yeah, courthouse. What other kind of
How
retail?
tall is the theater?
The
Under 60
theater
feet.
is 50 feet, but it has certain portions that are over 50.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, let me ask this question. If a building, if we, let's just say hypothetically approve 75 feet, and a project comes in that is 75 feet that we think doesn't fit within there, do we have the ability to say no to it, even though it complies with the 75 feet?
Yes. Because you have aesthetic review authority in your review process. And if by the mass, by the configuration of that, you say it just doesn't fit and will cause an aesthetic impact to the site and surrounding area in the community, then you have that opportunity to turn it down. That's thin, but you have that opportunity.
Don't we have a, for use of a better word, a master plan requirement in EDC now? Didn't we put some
Yes.
requirement, what's it
Yes.
called?
No, it is a master plan.
Master
You do
plan.
need to, and we're still working out that detail. You do need to have, when you are developing a property, you need to develop, if the property is large enough, just the master plan for your property. But if your property is not that large, then you need to develop a master plan for your site and the surrounding area so that you've got some consistency in the massing, the setbacks, the landscaping, the architecture, and so forth for that area. So that in and of itself is going to discourage some smaller properties from developing right away, but larger properties and/or collections of properties, it will give them a real consistency in those developments.
Okay. So as long as we have that requirement there and the review and to be able to deny it, I guess I'm willing to leave the 75 there. What's the rest of the commission think?
I'm in favor of the 75.
Okay.
I think that gives us options to allow things if they're appropriate and to scale it back. Let's put it this way, if something came in that the city really wanted, that we're not anticipating today, that was 75 feet, and we locked this in at 50 feet, we'd have to do an amendment to the plan and all that other kind of stuff to do it. Whereas if something came in at 75 feet that was a monstrosity and we didn't want it in there, we could say no and make them scale it down. That gives us the option.
Could we put in there 50 feet and then a caveat there that says 50 to 75 allowed, but under special review or something to that effect?
The land use itself would probably be under a conditional use permit review, so you would already be doing that special
Okay.
review.
Okay. Commissioner Folsom?
No, I'm comfortable as is.
Lisa?
Okay.
No, if you don't, speak up.
No, I understand it better. That's why, 100 feet just really caught my eye.
That's a huge property. You're talking about Irvine,
Yeah.
with a 10-story building in there. But if, like, say when somebody wanted to come in and build yachts or build airplanes, they'd need this huge building for cranes and things like that on the inside. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily,
Yeah, but it's up there in the industrial
Does
area.
Right.
this, like the hotel that came before us on the other side, is it in?
45, it's 45 feet.
45, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's adjacent to a residential. None of these
Right, it's adjacent
EDCs
to
are
rest,
adjacent
okay.
to residential.
Okay.
so-
right.
Okay, so we're good with the numbers there then. Any other, let's go down to the bottom.
Well, I did on the setbacks.
Yeah.
I just wanted to know, is that the same as Riverside County's setbacks? Are these setbacks?
No, these are all unique to the city.
How do they
Some of them may
compare
be,
with Riverside County? Do you know
I
Riverside?
can't tell you that. I'm simply going with my experience and recommendation to you as to what the setback should be.
Okay. And are the setbacks usually different in the ECD than they are in a neighborhood?
Yes, because in some instances, such in the downtown areas, where you want to encourage storefronts and walk-in from the street and so forth, they're going to be smaller than what you may want as far as in other commercial areas where you're going to want a landscape setback, you typically will have some parking in front of it, and then the building itself. So under that recognition, you're going to have a larger setback. You're going to want to move the mass back from the right-of-way so that you don't get that built up. You're not going down a hallway. But in the downtown area, that is a characteristic of a downtown, to have buildings that are quite near the street. You get that feeling of this is a metropolis, this is an urban area by that, and that's why some of these setbacks are pretty small.
And you also, the whole walkability environment is that way, you know,
Right.
it's the thinner streets, the slow traffic, and the smaller community feel, so. Okay, any other questions or comments on the numbers in that table? Okay, then let's go down the bottom here, Northern Gateway. We're talking about mixed-use allowances within the EDC. Okay,
You guys wanted some changes, and so we put in some changes.
commercial 25, no, those are the ones those are the numbers we discussed?
Yes.
The other day, okay. So residential less than 5% good, commercial, now these are maximums, right? Are these maximums or
Yeah,
minimums?
25.
0 to 25.
0 to 25, okay. Okay, industrial. Okay, northern, I see, density range 5 to 8, okay. Then page 22. Calls.
In the McCall Boulevard area, where it says office, 0 to 20%. We've looked at that for medical offices. I just have a question, should that be more of a percentage? I didn't know, so I'm asking your opinion. There. I didn't.
20%'s pretty large, but if you really want to encourage that area and focus on,
I just don't know, I'm just asking your professional opinion. It was just something I thought about.
could be higher, and it's not going to negatively affect the situation. It gives more opportunity, but how much land is left out there vacant for development, so.
Okay.
I'm a little nervous on the 30 and 25% on Community Core Newport Road. I don't remember, because originally the intent was that no more than, how was that on the EDC? What was the number on housing? The maximum wasn't it 15%?
I have forgotten what
Lisa?
the number
I
is.
think it was 15%
And-
amongst all the EDC.
The total
Yeah, amongst
EDC.
all, right.
And so by redrafting these development code, is that pulling that out?
No. This sub-area goes averaged for the entire area. So you could have 30% in this one area and still, for the total, be under the 15%.
Okay, as long as that 15% max for the entire EDC
Mhm.
rule stays, then I'm
Right.
okay with that. What's the rest of the commission think?
That's fine.
We okay? Okay, any other changes on page 22?
Just one's minor. IE, again, should be EG, for example. Under that, right under the table.
Mhm.
Is that all you had, Commissioner Folsom? Okay, in existing non-conforming single-family dwellings, I just had a question. It's tract maps approved. I just wanted to know, do we have any tract maps that are approved in the ECD right now?
Yes,
Mary? We do?
yes. There's a couple, at least in the northern gateway, between Ethenac and McLaughlin Road. There's nothing in McCall. There's nothing in the Newport Road. Nothing in Community Core that I know of, and there's a small one in the southern gateway.
Where in the Southern Gateway?
I think it's just right around here.
It's just north of the junction?
Yeah,
Okay,
probably right here.
there.
So they're considered permitted?
They're vested, aren't they, at this point?
Yes.
Yeah, they're going in.
Okay, okay.
Okay, anything else on page 22? If not, we'll go to page 23. Looks like Earl had a addition there, depending on building purpose and use, so entrance frequency, depending on building purpose, use, street frontages and pedestrian access, building entrance shall occur at least every 150 feet. Street face, related entrance. So this is more storefront design, right?
Yes.
Okay. So what do you mean by depending on the building purpose and use there, Earl?
Exactly. It depends on what the building is, designed for and what they're gonna be doing inside the building. Whether they're gonna do retail or are they gonna do, some other kind of consulting or something like that. That's gonna determine, the type of interest that they have.
So if you,
What I was trying to do was give a much broader aspect to the function itself of the entrance.
well, if we're gonna add that, then that means we're gonna have to have some ranges or define, it's not, you can't just say 150 feet, because what you're saying is there's gonna be different classifications, right? Isn't that what that's implying?
No,
No.
it gives enough wiggle room where the intent is still 150 feet. But with the language that's proposed, it could now be 170 feet, it could be 200 feet, because you have got a particular kind of activity that calls for a great deal of storefront for one use. And this gives you a little bit of flexibility that then says, well, okay, we want them 150 feet or less, but in your case, under this review, you're fine.
Okay. Is the rest of the commission okay with that?
I agree with the chair that in reading this, it says, depending on building purpose and use, okay, so what use would be 150 feet? I think this does create tiers. It doesn't say, depending on review pursuant,
What if we said, depending, I agree with you, what if we said shall occur at least on average every 150 feet, or 150 feet depending on staff review? Would that, or you still want the classifications?
You're still going to have commission review.
Well, the thing is, if they want to do more frequent than 150 feet, they can do it within this. If you want to go greater than 150 feet, I think we'd need to review that on a case-by-case basis, because that would seem to create safety problems and things like that. You're creating longer. So I would feel more comfortable. The purpose of this code is to give developers a roadmap of what we're looking for. So this code in here tells me that the first thing I'm going to do is say, well, depending on our usage, and we're going to get an argument on this 150 feet every single time. Whereas if they've got a legitimate need to make it 150 feet, they can propose an amendment for that. I just think this opens up an area of debate which we could close by putting a number in there and let them try to open it up, as opposed to this being a debate in every single case.
Charles, what do you think about that?
Staff's original language did not include the green. It stated, street frontages and pedestrian access, building entrances shall occur at least every 150 feet. If you've got a need for something that's a street frontage that's 200 feet, it's not that difficult to create a second entrance in order to meet the 150-foot separation requirement.
So how big, and maybe you don't know offhand, but the front of a Costco?
Typically, it's more like a Walmart, a super Walmart. They'll have their entrances about 150 feet apart from one.
Right, but I'm talking about like for
another.
Costco or Sam's Club, they want you to come in one specific entrance so that they can check your
Yeah.
Well, how about that,
card.
that
So does
super
that
target?
exceed the 150 typically, do you know?
Yes, that would, but trying to think of,
Well, we're approaching the 7 o'clock hour here, so do we want to think on this and stop here?
I did bring some pictures of these types of buildings that I saw, some storefront design architectural, so if you want, we could hold off.
Okay, why don't we hold off and stop there? Does Lisa have the pictures?
Jen does.
Okay, Jen does. So, I guess let's take a look at them real quick, okay?
They mentioned in our reading, it didn't mention any kind of lighting fixture. And I just thought these were good examples of what some of our buildings could look like in that area. There's some more. They turned these into doctor's offices. So anyway, I just thought they were good examples.
Okay. So why don't we table it for now there? We'll take a 5-minute break, and then we'll go to the regularly scheduled planning commission meeting.
You know what, I did attend the last city council meeting, and they were very concerned about getting this
Done.
development, ECD, done. They've got a lot of, I guess, developers coming in, knocking at their doors, and they really, there was some discussion about us really trying to get this finished. So I don't know if we need to maybe discuss that a little bit.
Yeah, we have 55 chapters for the EDC.
We can come back after the meeting and pick it
Yeah.
back up again.
Yeah.
I'm willing, I don't know how that works logistically for staff.
Oh, we can do that.
Okay. Well, why don't we see how late our commission meeting goes? If it's quick, we'll continue on, okay? So let's take a quick 5-minute break, and then we'll start the regular meeting. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Should we do a roll call? Jen?
Yes, sir. Commissioner Folsom.
Here.
Commissioner Carwin.
Here.
Commissioner Phillips.
Here?
Vice Chair Sobek.
Here.
Chair Thomas.
Here. Let's go ahead and stand for the flag salute. Hand on your heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, do we have any modifications? Well, we do have one modification. The 9.1 will be continued, correct?
And we'll take a motion on that when it comes.
Okay. Any other modifications or changes?
No, sir.
Okay. Do we have any, we don't have any presentations at this time. Do we have any public comment?
Yes, sir. Katie Manier. I just have to put my permanently. Mr. Carwin, I'd like to thank you for reviewing all the information I sent you, and I would be more than happy to send you additional information if you need. I would like an update on what has been done and what future plans might be. If you could please keep me apprised of what action might be taken or what would be done. Then I want to know, what is the city doing about the water shortage? Are any of you aware we're in a drought, a serious drought? We need to slow down our building instead of speeding it up, and it seems like we're just going at a horse race pace here. Building, every house that's built has a washing machine, a dishwasher. We have showers, toilets, landscaping. Why are we not making it mandatory for new homes to have drought-tolerant landscaping and low-flow water users? And why not make it mandatory for them to also have solar as a feature? Some cities are doing that. Then I want to know, do all of you know that this city has a city manager that never has filled out a resume or an application? I want to know how you get a job without a resume or an application. My grandson at 16 and a half has been asked to fill out resumes for piddly little low-paying jobs. And we have a city manager making, who knows, I don't even know what his salary is. And we don't even ask for a resume or a job application. He started here basically as a community liaison, doing grunt work, a flunky, and was just handpicked for the job. The city paid a former city manager to come in and train him at our expense, your expense and my expense as taxpayers. So we had double duty, 2 city managers doing one job. Rob has been inept since the beginning and has cost the taxpayers hundreds of thousands of dollars in bungled jobs. And I'm wondering why nobody has questioned it. I've stood up here, I've talked, people have listened, they've heard, and nobody does anything and nobody cares.
No further speakers on this item.
Okay, did you have a comment in either city attorney?
No, no.
Okay. Then we'll move on to approval of the minutes of April 8th. Do we have a motion?
Make a motion to approve the
Okay,
minutes.
do we have a second?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, aye. There's nothing on the consent calendar. We'll move on to item 9.1 has been continued at the request of the applicants. So we will move on to item 9.2.
We
You
would need a
need to take
motion.
action.
Okay, take a motion?
You need to open the public hearing.
Okay,
It
It's-
was open, I believe.
It was left open,
It was left
correct?
open, yeah.
All right.
okay, so let's go ahead and take it. We take an oral or a count.
Just a voice vote.
Okay, all in favor of continuing item 9.1 to, is it to a date certain or
May
just?
13.
Yeah, and we'll just need a motion and a second on that.
And do we have a motion and a second?
I motion.
Do we have a
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. And the public hearing will stay open on that. 9.2, we have the amendment to the municipal city code adopting an environmental determination and an ordinance to establish an orderly process by which land uses and businesses of existing before incorporation but not fully compliant with the current city codes may receive a business license and progress towards code in compliance. Do we have a staff report on this?
Mr. Chair, members of the commission, this has been in the works for a number of months, about 18 months. It started, and the city council has held workshops on it. We've had input with the community as well. So this has been, and the process has been a little bit different than normal. Typically, you would see something come through the planning commission, then to the city council. In this case, this has actually kind of gone through, the city council has looked at it, they've come back and given some direction and some through their workshop, and I believe that workshop was reviewed by some or hopefully all of you online, so you understand where the council was coming from as well. I would ask Charles Leclerc to review this with the commission, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions that the commission may have.
Okay.
Thank you. The item before you is this Code Amendment 2015-024. As the director just commented, it is something that's been worked on from the city council, city administration, staff, the city attorney's office, and so forth for 18 months. With the city's adoption of its new general plan in 2003, it adopted new goals and policies for the city's growth. To implement those goals and policies, the city is, as you just were doing under your workshop, creating a new development code to deal with those goals and policies. The reason why the city incorporated was in order to gain control over local land use decisions and local land uses. The development code does that. It allows for that. This new chapter of the new development code would provide for that local control over local land uses. The commission is also aware that the city is relatively young, and therefore there are a number of activities and commercial businesses that were established, some existing non-conforming, some with county registrations, others without any kind of review by the county, but existing prior to the city's incorporation. The city has been attempting to come up with a way with dealing with those activities and those businesses, in a reasonable and fair manner, and yet not in a manner that gives them an advantage over businesses and land use activities that would come in today and would be subject to all the standards, rules, and requirements of the underlying zoning district. The city knows that a lot of these activities and businesses represent a significant investment on the part of those business owners or those landowners. But again, they could be activities and so forth that are inconsistent with the code and could not be brought under consistency with the code without having this chapter in place. Again, the city is attempting to create something that is reasonable, fair, and compassionate in regards to how it's going to deal with these existing land uses and businesses. Now, the director commented that the city council, this process has been a little bit skewed. Staff has been working on this for quite a period of time. There have been a number of iterations of the reports. We've had meetings with interested individuals, property owners, and so forth, and the material has evolved again and again and again over time. What you have in front of you tonight is something that is the culmination of those reviews that had been presented to the City Council at its January 26th workshop, in which the council was fairly confident in the material. A lot of that material was specifically created by the city attorney's office, so staff is comfortable that from a legal standpoint, it will, it will hold up if somebody challenges it legally. And as the director said, we hope that you have had the opportunity to review the video of the council meeting or the council workshop, or at least review the minutes that were attached to your report. The item before you will create a mechanism that will give property owners or businesses a period of time in order to address the land use issues that are inconsistent with the underlying zoning district. In the staff report, we provided both a narrative summary of the ordinance, trying to put it into a little bit plainer language, and obviously the full narrative of the proposed code amendment. In addition to that, and consistent with the material that you've seen in other chapters, Commissioner Phillips has had the opportunity to review the item and make suggested changes to the language that's before you. That was an attachment to your staff report. You have the opportunity to review both, one or the other, or a combination of the two, depending on how you choose to approach it. Also noted within the staff report is that we put this chapter into the typical development code chapter format that we're using for other chapters, dealing with the material having an objective to the chapter, qualified land use activities, land use and business registration requirements, land use and business registrations restrictions and limitations, licensing and fees, transfer or reestablishment, and signage limitations. I'd like to go through each of those very briefly so that you have, and on the record is a small summary of the material. It is important to note, part of the public record is the full staff report, which has the full narrative. So if someone is interested in the full narrative, they can review the staff report either from the clerk's office or on the city's website. In essence, the chapter summary, you are given the objective of this chapter to come up with a mechanism to deal with the issues that I've already talked about. Qualifying businesses and land use activities are provided in your staff report, dealing with land use activities that were established before October 1st, 2008, the city's incorporation. Those that had valid Riverside County certificates of registrations or that were found to be exempt. Businesses that must have been consistently operated since before incorporation. To receive city registration, a number of things must be met, such as in the first year after the ordinance is in effect, if you register your business, you'll have 10 years to resolve whatever underlying zoning inconsistencies that exist, or the opportunity to operate for the 10 years and then move your business. If you register your business after 1 year from the date the ordinance goes into effect, you will have 3 years from that registration in order to do the same things I just mentioned, get your business in order or move out. In no case, however, do you get to go beyond the 10-year anniversary date of the effective date of the ordinance. Each registered land use shall conform with a number of items: ingress and egress to the facility, as well as city required parking. An ordinary city inspection would be required, business license inspection, fire inspections, and so forth. You are required to enter a hold harmless agreement with the city so that if your activity is such and someone gets injured or some other situation arises, the city's held harmless for giving you these 10 years to resolve your current land use inconsistencies. You are not allowed to expand the operation that is part of this registration without review and approval from the city. Not that you're not allowed to do it ever, but you've got to have city review of that expansion. You also, if you've got previous conditions of approval that were applied by the county, you must satisfy those conditions of approval, or through your hold harmless agreement or other agreement with the city, come to terms as to when you're going to resolve those conditions. The registered business must also be subject to the following: that you're not allowed to do retail sales from the facility if it's a residential district. Your use of metal shipping containers is subject to the standards of Chapter 9.16, metal shipping containers. Outdoor storage is limited to that allowed in the underlying zoning district. Different districts have different percentages and different allowances, and you'd be subject to that. Also, if you have a commercial auto repair facility, a bar, then you are limited to the storage that is associated with that kind of an activity, which is defined within the code.
Why do you call it bar? I had a question.
Those are initials for Bureau of Automotive Repair.
Oh, okay. I had a question.
spelled out in the ordinance itself,
Yeah,
yes.
okay.
It's an automotive repair shop that sells alcohol.
Yeah, I just thought Charles late when Charles was typing it or something, you know.
That vehicle dismantling, salvage, et cetera, is prohibited. You can't have a wrecking yard no matter where no matter at what time it was ever established. It's not permitted in the city. There is also, again, the requirement for the registration and a fee established for the processing of that registration and the inspection of the site to establish a baseline for which the city would then tell whether you've had any opportunity to, or in the future, whether you expand your operation, which is not allowed without city review. That also triggers a requirement for an annual inspection. So again, so that we can see that your operation is fundamentally the same and that it is not expanding. And there's a fee associated, established with that inspection for that. That the the registration for the business or land use activity may be transferred under certain circumstances to another entity, and that signage that was legitimate before incorporation is allowed to continue, but if you want new signage, it would be subject to the allowances of the underlying zoning distance. Staff, as I said before, went through a number of iterations of this material. A number of items were looked at, debated, pounded on as much as we could, and then were left out of the ordinance. Some of those were identified within your staff report, dealing with restrictions of limiting this registration allowance to only rural businesses or businesses of a minimum size or businesses within a specific zoning classification such as rural residential. That a formal agreement had to be entered into dealing with dedications and improvements of right-of-way, dealing with resolution before you'd be allowed to continue your operation of any known neighbor complaints or disputes. And there are a number of other items that are within your staff report. What the commission is being asked, well, let's do this first. Also in your staff report, as with all development code amendments, you are required to find that it is consistent with the goals and policies of the adopted general plan. Staff has listed a number of goals and policies that staff believes are pertinent to this discussion. Also, we give you a summary explaining how we think that that the goals and policies are met by this particular development code amendment. The commission is asked to include those goals and policies or take any of them out or add new ones in that you feel are appropriate for this particular code amendment, and make it whatever changes that you would like to that summary to illustrate how you feel those goals and policies are met by the language within this proposed code amendment. Why I ask that is because that summary and those goals and policies are included as part of the resolution that staff is asking you to approve that makes your recommendation to the City Council. In addition, the environmental, we believe that this development code amendment fulfills part of the goals and policies of the adopted general plan. Therefore, it would fall under the umbrella of the environmental impact report that was created and adopted by the council, certified by the council when it certified the environmental for the general plan. Now back to the point I was making a moment ago. In essence, staff is asking you to look at the language that's before you and discuss and decide whether or not you believe the concept itself, allowing a mechanism to legitimize those activities and land uses, businesses that were in existence prior to the city's incorporation, but which may not be consistent with current and may not have been consistent with previous county land use requirements or allowances, whether it's a valid concept to pursue, whether the 10-year time frame is a legitimate time frame to give individuals to come into compliance, whether you feel the annual inspection is or is not necessary, whether or not the limitations dealing with retail sales, shipping containers, outdoor storage, vehicle storage, etc., are sufficient in order to protect adjoining, surrounding, and the community as a whole, adjoining and surrounding properties as well as the community as a whole, whether you believe it's appropriate to have such registration transferable so that it perpetuates these activities. You may have a business that you want to sell, and you may not be able to afford all the changes that need to be made in order to meet the underlying zoning classification, but somebody else may be willing to buy your business and then do those improvements and make it consistent with the underlying requirements. And the transferability would be inappropriate for that. And in regards to whether or not you think existing signs or old signs should be allowed to remain as is, or whether all signs should be subject to current sign standards, or that issue left out entirely. So, again, you have the opportunity to look at what staff has proposed, what was looked at by the council and sent to you, what Commissioner Phillips has proposed as amendments to that language, some combination of the two, but I think the fundamental questions that you need to answer are those that I just outlined for you and which are within your staff report. I'm trying to give you some kind of framework to not necessarily guide, but start your discussion of this particular chapter. With that, I'll try to answer any questions that you may have and ask that you receive comments from the public. Also, my recommendation to you is that you make a decision tonight on the proposed resolution that would send your recommendation on to the City Council, have that resolution addressed tonight and sent forward to the City Council so that they can consider it and adopt or reject the amendment to the code.
Okay, thank you, Charles. I have several questions, but I'm going to hold them until the discussion section. So is there any limited questions that the commission have at this point that we may not cover in the discussion? Is there anything basically you want to ask at this point?
Well, I guess I have a fundamental question. When I was looking at what other cities have done with regard to non-conforming structure uses, most of the cities, in fact, all the cities that I saw, they put together non-conforming structures, uses, and lots or parcels. Why is this only uses?
This is a chapter above and beyond the non-conforming section.
Okay.
If it's a non-conforming anything, then it's assumed that it was consistent and legally established before the law was changed that makes it non-conforming. We don't know whether or not these activities were or were not legally established to be considered non-conforming in all cases. We are trying to set up a mechanism that's a little bit higher than that non-conforming chapter that gives this city some flexibility to deal with land uses and or businesses that were established And unfortunately, the county ignored or didn't have manpower to go investigate or never was brought to their attention. It's something above and beyond the non-conforming.
So is that
chapter.
addressed elsewhere in the ordinance somewhere?
No, it's not. That's why we.
Well, no,
and
I'm
it's-
saying the structures.
Oh, the
legal
non-conforming,
structures.
yes, there's an entire chapter on non-conforming structures. And staff has looked at a number of other cities. Yes, you are correct. The vast majority of cities will simply have a non-conforming chapter and there are mature enough communities where they don't have this kind of a problem. Our issue is we're 5, 6 years old, and there are a lot of things that were taking place before the city incorporated, and we have to deal with it.
Okay, any other basic questions?
Yeah, has anybody tallied up how many businesses we're talking about? Because since we're so deep into being a city, it should be a finite number by now.
In the council's workshop, they said from 25 to 200.
Yes.
Well, we know Mr. Machado said he represents 25 businesses,
And there's a, was a
and
mini
somebody
as
said there's
200.
200 total. So has anybody actually tallied how many there are?
No, because we have not done a physical survey of the entire community to identify. We're responding, and at the workshop, we were responding to the question as much of contact as we've had, and when we've sent out renewal, sometimes there had business licenses that were issued in error, and then when people sent in the renewal, we had to say, no, you can't have a renewal, because now we're looking at land use. The Community Development Department had the opportunity to look at the land use aspect of that business and turn down that business license request. And so we've got a listing of those, but we don't have a survey of the entire community to say there are 500 or whether there are 73.
Short answer, no.
Short answer, no.
And no estimate?
I would agree that it's probably 200 or less.
All right.
And you're probably talking about a couple of dozen that are significant, and the vast majority of the others are relatively small.
Okay, any other questions of the commission, of staff? Okay, if none, we'll go ahead and open the public hearing at 7:32. Jen, was this properly noticed?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Have we received any correspondence?
No further correspondence.
Okay. We're going to go ahead and open up for public testimony. I'm sure we have a few people would like to speak here. Do we have public speaker?
Tom Furman?
And
Good evening, Commissioners. The problem I see right here is the business license, that they must progress towards full compliance with all city ordinances and regulations. 90% of these businesses cannot ever come into comply with the regulations because specifically Section 2136 of the Home Occupation Code, okay, requires the occupation must be conducted entirely inside the dwelling. The occupation cannot be conducted in an accessory structure, and the vehicle has to be incidental to the residence, and you can have no employees. Now, the businesses that we are talking about have been here for many, many years. They are on large lots in a rural community. And there's no way that they can come into compliance unless you make a recommendation that the home occupation ordinance be looked at for a possible exception for businesses on large lots that are already established in an accessory structure, and they conduct their business outside their dwelling, and they may have a couple employees. They've been here for many, many years. My business alone has been here for 22 years, and it doesn't fit in the home occupation ordinance, okay? The home occupation ordinance was designed in Riverside a long, long time ago to clean up downtown Riverside, to get rid of all the businesses that were in driveways. The home-based occupation ordinance is good for housing tracts, but it just doesn't fit in the large rural districts that we have in our city now. And I would like to see a recommendation from you guys to look at the home occupation and make an exception in conjunction with the recommendation for this zoning change. The zoning change could be a good start, but the way I see it, it's only a 10-year Band-Aid, and then the guy still can't come into compliance because he's not allowed to work outside his home. Thank you very much.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to add some information. I'm just finishing up the chapter on home occupations and home-based businesses.
Okay.
The home occupation, there are now going to be two separate categories. Home occupations, which will allow basically what was just commented on, with the exception of one employee. But the home-based business will now be something that allows multiple vehicles to be on site and up to 5 employees. That's going to cover a great many of the activities
That's
that
under
was just
the
referenced.
home occupation you're drafting now.
That chapter will be presented to you relatively soon because it is an issue that interplays with this one. And yes, staff understands that there's a distinction between the truly home occupation where somebody sews dolls together for swap meets versus someone that does some other kind of activity and they use an accessory building, which would be allowed for the home-based business as an allowance, a certain amount of storage outside, appropriately located, certain number of vehicles to be allowed to be parked overnight on that site, and a certain number of employees, all of which reviewed by the city so that you minimize the potential impacts. If you've got a large piece of property, then you can have a lot of these things going on certain locations of your property and have no impact. If you've got a tiny piece of property, a quarter of an acre, and you've got 5 trucks on it, that impacts the neighbors, and the city would have the chance under that new code to say, no, this is too intense for that location. So we understand the question and the issue, and it does interplay with this one.
And it will have, the two categories will be partially based on land size, acreage?
No.
No.
Because we want to separate the intensity of activities, but not necessarily the size of activities, because you can still have a relatively intense as far as needing to park trucks, needing to have employees, but have virtually no impact upon the surrounding properties, and you can have a small property do that.
The reason I ask is we had, in our neighborhood, a gentleman in our home, which were acre lots, acre and a quarter. He put a gym in his garage, which, well, I didn't care, but he had 5 or 6 cars parked in his yard and the neighbors complained. So if he had put that gym on a 2-acre lot, no one would notice the difference. So I would think there would have to be some kind of lot size.
The commission, when it reviews that chapter, could add that particular provision in.
So, but for tonight, we can state that his suggestion is actually being implemented now.
Absolutely.
Okay. Next speaker.
Steve Chagola.
Good evening, Steve Chugoya. Want to make a few comments. First, I want to thank staff and.
You own Auto Air
Yes,
Pro off of Murrieta.
Let me start over. I got a little nervous because my mind just went completely.
You've talked to the city 100
different,
times.
A lot of things going on in my life, so I went to a totally different thing. My name is Steve Chagoya. I own Auto Air Pro. We've established business here in Menifee in 1990. My stepdad Jerry Rowe started the business over there in the blue shirt. I took over ownership back in 2002. It's been a family operation in the same location, doing the same thing. We want to stay in Menifee, and I appreciate all the time staff spent. This has been so much weight on me for the last, I think, 5 or 6 years. So much it's cost me a lot, more than you guys will ever understand. But this is a long time coming, like I said, and I appreciate all the hard effort that's been taken on this. But I wanted you guys to see faces, not just hear about the 200 people or the 25 people. The things that we do in the community, if you ask around, our reputation is solid. You know, we're one of those companies that rip people off. We're the go-to people that you send your mom to, your daughter to, and they're going to be taken care of, and nothing bad is going to happen. They're not going to get ripped off. That's the kind of rural community that we have. And you'll look out there in all these little mom and pop shops, and that's the kind of people that you'll see. And that's what Menifee's known for. And I just hope that, you know, with all the compliance stuff that goes on, that, you know, the compassion that we're showing today, it holds true throughout the process. And I'm not sure, like, when we walk into the meetings and how much money it's actually going to take, because if we go in and sign a document, are we going to be able to continue operating these businesses if, say, it takes $10,000 for a CUP or $20,000 for a land use variation? Are we going to be able to continue, and are we going to be able to, you know, we have to have revenue in order to come up with that kind of money. So if we're held down and not able to work while we're trying to come into compliance, I just wanted to get that stuff kind of cleared up. If you could help me with that.
Are there any specific points you want to address in this ordinance?
Really, the cost. Like, you know, like we can get like a cost sheet on what it's going to take from when we start.
We can give a specific answer to his specific question. If this ordinance is adopted as proposed, you would be allowed to continue your operation without obtaining a conditional use permit or plot plan. And the cost that you would incur would be the cost for the $350 for the initial registration, some costs associated with the entering into the agreement, the hold harmless agreement, which will be generated by the city attorney's office, and will probably be a package, so it'll be this cost that will be spread out over a number of applications, and the $150 a year inspection fee. But
Okay,
there would not be a $10,000.
$40,000.
No.
Okay, that's what my fear was, because that sets you back
Correct.
quite a bit. We have to start planning now for 2 years from now. So,
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
No further speakers, sir.
Okay. Do you have a quick question?
I do. I just don't know if I need to, I know Steve and his father, and I didn't know if I sold a vehicle to his father.
Do you need to disclose that?
Do I
Does
need to
she
disclose that?
She doesn't need to disclose it since this is a zoning ordinance and not a this isn't a quasi judicial like permit
I just
application,
wanna
but
make
it's,
sure that I'm
it's
okay.
good to let the public know.
Okay, okay.
I think you had dinner there. No.
And I ate some of his pickles that he makes, and they're really good.
Okay. If there's no other public comment, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing at 7:42, and we'll take it behind the dais. Let's go ahead, and I have a question for the commission. We have, actually for Charles first, in the procedurally. We have the summary and then the code, and then we have Commissioner Phillips' edits. Is the draft of the code and the summary comments include Commissioner Phillips' comments, or no?
No, it does
No.
not.
Okay. So does the commission want to go over his comments first, or how would you like to do this?
Well, could I ask a threshold legal question?
Sure.
This was brought up at the city council meeting, and it's concerning to me. With regard to compliance, what would the date of the standard be for compliance? In that, you know, because you can't be held to a law that was not in place when you violated a law. You know, if the law changes, it goes back to the date of violation. So it would be my understanding that the only way I could seem to resolve it would be if the date of compliance would be the date as of the date you registered your business initially. But if it takes 10 years...
Something's going to change in that 10 years.
Exactly. So do they have to keep updating their compliance? And the secondary question is, do current businesses have to update their compliance as the law changes, or are they locked in at the date that they comply?
So it would be, this sounds kind of weird, it'd be the date of compliance, basically, when they decide upon compliance, you look at the applicable codes at that time. Obviously, they're changing over time, but as long as between years 1 through 10, at some point they come into compliance at that point, then they're beyond the provisions of this chapter. They've complied at that point. So they don't have to recycle their compliance over and over again once they've complied.
So a business that is registered after 2008, one that doesn't apply to this code, but a newer business, are they required to update their compliance as the code changes?
Not until they pull a building permit. or
No,
something to that.
and that's sort of goes to the discussion about non-conforming uses, for example. As long as you're established legally at that time, even if later on the zoning, for instance, changes or development guidelines changes, you're legal. You might be non-conforming at that point, but you can continue in operation.
So a business, once they come into compliance and get signed off, they don't have to have the yearly inspections anymore or anything like that?
Correct. That would be my understanding of it.
Right.
A continuation of Commissioner Kerwin's question, though, let's say as of today, the setback from the road on a non-artery street is 10 feet. And they're doing their improvements, and 5 years from now, the city decides to increase the setback to 20 feet. And they're not gonna be able to do that wall or that driveway or whatever until 5 years from now, because they're saving their money. What standard do they have to comply with? The 10 feet or the 20 feet?
My argument would be that when you get your registration, when you conform to this chapter of the code, that would be the point at which your rules would be applicable. Changes after that date would not be applicable unless you change something else on your property that went beyond what you had registered.
Okay, because that goes to his question of, he's gonna go in and get he's gonna register. They're gonna give him a laundry list of what he has to do to come up to, quote, compliance. So he's gonna start chipping away at those. And if it says you must put a brick wall at 10-foot setback, and he's gonna budget for that, that's $10,000, say. My concern is that later on, the code will change. It was with planning commissioners and with councilmen, it will change. Design standards will change. That later on, they go, no, you need to put a 10-foot wall. Now that's going to be $20,000. That's what I'm trying to prevent. So what you said was it's going to be the 10-foot setback and the wall that was required upon his registration. Is that correct?
Although, what if health and safety codes change?
This is land use, this is not a health and safety code. Health and safety codes are totally
Well-
under the criteria of health and safety. And right now, if a business is such that a significant change to the health and safety code or American with Disabilities Act change or whatever, then they're subject to it. And that is not something that this ordinance, this development code would address.
So
So it sounds like the answer is the date that they register is the date that the standards are that they have to comply.
That's my understanding.
And so when they go in to get a registration, I assume staff is going to give them the laundry list of what compliance is. Is that correct?
No, only if they ask for it, because that involves staff time, and we will not, part of why we're doing it this way is so that we don't go out there. What was originally envisioned was that we would go out, examine the site, give them the laundry list that you're talking about, and then enter into an agreement with them that says that you're going to apply for a conditional use permit. You're going to put in 12 parking spaces. You're going to have a driveway of this. You're going to have a separation wall of this way. And all those things, that is fundamentally a conditional use permit review. We charge $10,000 as a deposit for a conditional use permit because it costs staff time and city time to do that. We didn't want to go through that
So
full
that
effort
clarifies
without
it.
the applicant knowing that, and staff is perfectly willing to have them come in, and we will go through things with them to give the idea
Without
that,
having to get a conditional use permit.
Correct.
Give them some guidance.
give them some guidance that here's what the new code says, here's what typically would happen, so on and so forth, and do it in a more generic fashion.
That's what I'm
And so
looking at.
they could still be budgeting towards, if we know there's a requirement for a separation between a residential and commercial activity, and it's got to be at least 5 feet high or 6 feet high, then that property owner can go out and measure his 140 feet of property line and know that a 5-foot wall is going to cost him $12 a foot, and do the arithmetic.
So to be clear, there's going to be no immediate compliance officer or inspector coming out to each of these registrants. They're simply going to get their, sign up, pay their $350 and whatever else little fees there are, and they're gonna be given 10 years. The onus is on the property owner to make their property
To
comply.
take the steps to make it compliant. Yes, there will, however, be an inspection, because we need to
When?
set when they register, when they apply for the registration, we will go out there and do a business license inspection and a planning inspection to set a baseline for which, in the future inspections, will show whether or not they have or have not changed their activity or intensified their activity. Because the code does not allow them to change it or intensify it without city approval.
So there will be an inspection.
Yes,
It will not be a quote CUP, but it will be a list of what is understood that they must do to come
No.
into compliance? No.
it's a listing of what they are physically doing on the site.
You said included planning.
Correct. Planning will go out there and see, they're doing this kind of land use activity, they're storing these trucks, that location where it's happening and so forth. Not a review of what they would have to do in order to conform to code.
So it sounds like what they do is they do the initial inspection when they register. Next year, they come out and compare that to last year's inspection to see if anything's changed.
Correct.
Didn't put another building on, expand their
Right.
business and such. Now,
Right.
Mr. Joe has a trailer and he's using it as an office, say.
Mhm.
He doesn't have chemicals anywhere, he simply has a secretary parked there and he has a trailer,
Mhm.
okay? He will be able to register, he will get inspected, they'll come out and do what you said. He will be able to continue to operate his business up to 10 years, and during that time, at the end of 10 years, he must
have gone
Come up-
through the process in order to find out what he has to do to make the activity consistent with the underlying requirements of the code.
Okay.
If he chooses to do nothing whatsoever
10
except
years, he
for
has to
run his
shut
business.
down.
That's right.
Okay.
So as Steve asked then the question, he was worried about the cost. So actually, the fees are small right now
Mhm.
towards the city, but when he sees he has to do all these improvements, it could be a lot more within that 10-year frame.
It would give that individual the opportunity to assess whether or not it's cost effective for them to do those improvements on that property or go someplace else, and gives them up to 10 years to make money in order to afford to go someplace else.
And so the problem with a lot of these properties is they are in residential areas,
Correct.
most of them.
Correct.
Okay?
And a lot of these will go away with the new home occupation and home-based business chapter, because a lot of these are operations that are out of accessory buildings, or have 3 employees, or have 2 trucks. And those are beyond what the code now allows. So I would say half of the problems that are out there now will go away with the new chapter. What we're dealing with mostly is large businesses that were known to the county and were registered, or known to the county and exempted from the registration for some reason, that are legitimate, profitable businesses, beneficial to the community, beneficial to those property owners or business owners that want to come into compliance and want to meet the requirements of the underlying code, but because of a variety of things, need more time than what was previously discussed, a year, 18 months, 3 years.
Now, if there was a business that is in a currently residential zoned area,
Mhm.
and it's not going to conform with one of these home occupations because there's the number of vehicles coming in,
Mhm.
or the industrial nature of it, they will, just to be clear, will eventually have to either apply for a change of zone
Mhm.
and underlying land use. That's
General plan amendment and zone
General
change.
plan amendment, zone change. Some of them will have to do that. Is that
Correct.
correct? Okay, I just want that understood and stated.
Right, and make a decision as to whether or
It's
not that's
cost effective to do that,
correct.
and whether
Or
they can
whether,
get council
whether
to agree.
community-wise it would be acceptable. You may have 5 acres of land, and you may want to request a general plan amendment and zone change from a residential to a commercial or industrial designation, But if it's surrounded by rural residential, the likelihood of success is small. And we would tell, staff would tell the applicant that it's a crapshoot and it's not a good crapshoot.
Okay, so I just want that clear, that there's some businesses that would conform, and there's some that would require an amendment to the general plan, and that is a risk that the property owner takes.
Correct.
Because of where they're located.
Right. But this is a very generous offer. We're talking 10 years. All you've got to do is within 1 year of the effective date, come in and register, allow the city to go out there and find out what you are doing out there. You'll have 10 years in order to resolve the problem. I know of no other community that is that generous or has an ordinance like this.
A question I have is, when in the workshop, there was a person by the name of Anne McGrath who talked about opening her business in 1976. And she talked about having a 15-year and then a 10-year CUP from Riverside County. And being over 35 years, she wasn't sure what to do now. And when I was listening to her and knowing a little bit of the McGrath name in the city, and the thought came to me, historic preservation. Can we, some of these businesses, and the reason why I thought about it, there's a business that's a garage where they fix cars on Magnolia and Riverside. Mr. Mayers owns that and was there for years and years and years. And as Riverside began to develop, I believe his shop became a historic little preservation area, even though they built around it. And it's a quite little charming business building right there amongst all kinds of modern stuff. That was a question that just came to my mind. I don't understand very
There
much
are
about
two
historic
answers-
preservation.
There are
and-
two answers to that question. One is, if the lady had her conditional use permits, then she established herself as an existing non-conforming, and there must be something that we're not being told, that they may have had a sunset clause, they may have had a variety of things. That is an issue that is really separate from what we're talking about here. Secondly, what you were just mentioning, that is something, we do have a historic preservation chapter that you will be looking at, and you will have the opportunity to make that kind of a provision under that chapter that says that, if this is a structure that is significant to the heritage of this community, that you are allowed these kind of exemptions. And you build that into the chapter, and it is in the chapter.
So is there guidelines to where that person would apply for that, or is it
That is
based-
something that we're
is it
still
based-
working on the
okay.
chapter, so
I
we
was
can
just
work
wondering
that
if it was based on, is there a historic reason that it was a historic difference in the city of Menifee, so I.
Right,
so-
contributed to the history or contributed to the
So
image of the
if
community and so forth.
if they were a building that we saw as part of Menifee's history and we wanted to preserve that, would they be exempt from some of these things?
What you would do in your historic preservation chapter is set up standards by which, if the commission or council or historic preservation commission determine that that structure or that land use or some feature of the property contributed to the history of the community or contributed to the image of the community and blah, 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 that it would be exempt from land use requirements
Okay.
in this fashion and that fashion.
Okay,
That is not unusual in communities.
okay, all right.
Commissioner Kerwin, did you have some more questions?
I think mine is more commentary. I wanted to talk about the sign ordinance issue. For me, the sign, I know the sign ordinance is a big issue here, whether we require these pre-incorporation businesses to meet current signage or if they're allowed to maintain their signage. I really think it's a case-by-case basis. I would love to have somebody come in with their sign and say, hey, did you write it in magic marker and hang it out in front? Or is it a cool old sign that doesn't comply but looks historical and fits in with the community? Is it an old stenciled, spray-painted sign, or is it, something that is
Well,
older but seems nice?
and we have a sign that looks like somebody went out there and used a magic marker right along the freeway.
Her hair, the hair.
the salon place and.
Oh, on the wall?
Yeah, and, but in someone else's interpretation and in their eyes, they may see that as beauty, where another person's interpretation may.
Well, I'm not talking about somebody being bad at sign making. I'm telling that there was a lot of effort and design that went into that. That was an intentional. I mean, it's elaborate, and somebody wanted it that way. And whether it was somebody's friend who paints and did it for him at a discount or whatever, whether it's good or bad, I don't know art, but something like that, I actually don't even have a problem with whether it's a good or bad sign. I'm just talking about quality.
Well,
If it looks like somebody's running an established business, that sign looks like it's a real business. Whether you think the sign is pretty or not, it looks like a real business. As opposed to, you see the trucks that say, hauling on the side. The letters are all backwards and everything. And, something like that is what I would object to. So I don't know if we can apply an overall sign requirement to these kinds of businesses.
What you have is the opportunity, and you've got this in other chapters, where right now it says if the sign was erected consistent with the permitted signs in that, for that property or that zoning and so forth. You have the opportunity to simply say, put in a caveat that says that signs that were not permitted or were not consistent, or doesn't matter if they were or weren't, giving the commission the opportunity on a case-by-case basis to have that individual come in and say, here's my sign, can I keep it or can I not?
I would like to do that.
And you
I'm-
could
I'm
put that into your 54.080 signage. We'll put a caveat into
And I
that
think
effect.
that's-
If it's the,
That's fair, because none of these businesses will comply with the sign ordinance, because they're not in commercial areas, or at least 90% of them are not. So they're gonna fail already according to the sign ordinance. We might as well give them out to say, okay, bring your ugly sign or your good sign, and let's have let's agree or disagree. So I agree with your,
Yeah, because I don't have a problem with a homemade sign as long as it looks neat and, presents well. And,
so do we want the commission or staff to review that?
commission,
Okay, okay. So
can
we're
we
gonna.
designate Mr. Leclerc personally as having to review every sign?
no, I resign, I resign.
So as a commission, everyone in agreement that we'll add wording for sign review for these? Okay.
And we suggest, because it's going to end up in front of you, that there has to be some kind of fee associated with this.
My wife and I always say $2.
Nope. It's
How
going to be
much?
more than $2. Suggest $250, $250, because it is something that will require paperwork, inspections, a staff report, a presentation to the commission, and so forth.
I'm okay with that.
So a business that they have to basically self-report then, wouldn't they?
When we go out and do our inspection, we'll notice that the sign, and we can ask them, show me your permit, or if it doesn't, here's a procedure to go in front of the commission.
So the procedure would go upon registration, the initial inspection would go out, the inspector would note that their sign is not in compliance, and then they would have the option to either pay the $250 to have it reviewed, or what, if they don't have it reviewed?
Then
They have to remove the
they'd be
sign?
subject to the underlying requirements of the code, which says remove the sign.
So the language would be, if they choose not to have the sign reviewed, then they are then subject, it would be the only thing that they're required to immediately comply with?
Which is the way it is now.
Well, they'd be
Seems a little onerous.
They'd be subject to the existing sign ordinance, which they immediately fail, by definition.
Not necessarily.
Most of them do.
Yeah, most of them, yes.
But
So-
everything else on the property, they can just not fix for 10 years, but the sign they would immediately have to take down?
Because it's the
That's a good
most
point.
notable to the public right-of-way and to the community.
So if they're required to put a wall up under the current ordinance, and they don't want to put a wall up, they can just wait it out 10 years and go away. But if their sign, their hand-painted sign doesn't meet it, they immediately have to take that down and nobody knows they're there.
Right.
You're the one who came up with it.
Hey, I didn't say all my ideas were good. It's the fee that I had the problem with. So.
Well, let's stand back and take a look at the big pictures. Why are we doing this? Because we want to, number one, protect the existing business owners. But on the other side, we're trying to fix the beautification and safety of the surrounding properties. In other words, if a guy's driving 20 18-wheelers in and out, we want to stop that. So this will give us that's a public safety, health safety, main thing we can talk about. And the perception of keeping the neighbors happy is one of the purposes of this ordinance. So signage, and what else would it be included? Signage, traffic, one thing I was gonna bring up is volume of traffic, right? So there are gonna be a couple
Okay.
immediates, I would think, that would have to be complied with.
Well,
Maybe we
no,
can have a
I-
review of what that cost would actually be. It just seems like for Mr. Furman brought up the wood carver example, a guy like that paying $250. Well, then again, his sign is probably pretty awesome if he's a wood carver. But I just, maybe if we can find a way to lower that fee for people.
No, you don't have to put in a fee. You could suggest $50. You could suggest $5,000. What I pulled out of the air was simply a number because I know that it will, that it would require reviewing the application, filling out a small staff report, having reproductions and so forth presented to the commission, staff attendance at the commission, commission's time for sitting here, doing the review, the paperwork to note that you approved or disapproved, and put it in the file and a tickler so that we make sure that if it was not approved, that some other action take place to verify that it eventually is taken down.
Sure.
If it's not approved. Again, it's completely pulled out of the air. If you want to suggest some other number to the council, it will be up to the council as to whether they accept or reject that number.
What's the commission think? Economic Development, former director, Commissioner Folsom.
I'd like to hear from a business owner.
Yeah, I would as well. Would like to hear more people talk about some of the specifics of the, how it might impact their business. But, yeah, I understand that there's a cost to the city to review these signs, but I think for the most part, we are talking about small businesses, and I don't want to overburden them with a cost of this. And I would like to know more about what these businesses are and what their, what some of the issues are and what some of where they need to come into compliance, because I'm just unfamiliar with kind of the whole situation.
Trying to provide a list of all the businesses would require a survey of the community.
Right.
Staff would have to individually try and determine what the activities on site were and then evaluate where they were inconsistent. This is literally something, even if it's only a couple hundred businesses, that could take a year or more to do. We are dealing with the bigger issue of some big businesses that we're really trying to come up with a method. A few modest-sized businesses that the city has denied business licenses to, come up with a mechanism to give them some time to make a decision. And with the new home occupation and home-based business chapter, deal with an awful lot of the small activities that that simply are just a smidgen out of compliance, but a smidgen is a smidgen. You're out of compliance, you're out of compliance. With the new code, they won't be out of compliance, and it'll solve a lot of the problems.
Will that address signage for the small business?
Yes.
Will what address signage?
The home occupants?
Home occupancy, okay. Well, do we want to table that and leave it to that then? Are you okay with that, Commissioner Kerman? Letting the home occupation ordinance handle it?
You're going to end up with some businesses that don't fit into the home occupation that does fall under this chapter. The issue of sign compliance and the aesthetics and the impact of signs is legitimate. The only thing I raised, and yes, it is an economic issue, you can say zero and we'll still process it. It can be part of the 350 that's the original inspection requirement. It costs the city, just in creating this code, it costs the city money to do this. It costs the city the money to go out there and do inspections to remove things, to go through code enforcement. So it may be cost effective to just allow the commission to review and say yes and no without a fee, or a very modest fee, as opposed to going through a lot of hoops and having a fee that's associated with the actual cost of it. We're trying to bring people into conformance under this chapter. or under other chapters of the code by conforming to the requirements of those underlying codes. If you think it's going to be something that's going to chase people away, then don't call for a fee. We don't want to chase them away. We want them to come in. We want them to recognize that there is a mechanism this city is giving them to move forward to become legitimate or have enough time to reasonably find another location to do their activity.
When do you expect the home occupancy?
The chapter
Come forward.
is done. We can bring that chapter to you in June. And why I say June is because I'm not here the first meeting in May, and the second meeting in May, you've got the marijuana.
Well, then I think we should have them bring the signs before the commission, no fee. We'll give it as a recommendation to council, because this is all going to council anyway, and say one of the items they need to review is whether they want to recover fees on this or not. And actually, fees are not our purview, that is the council's purview.
Correct.
I agree with that. I'd tend to say this is more of a benefit to the city to have them bring their signs in. You know, this is sort of like the driver's license issue. You want more people to get driver's licenses than get insurance. We want people to bring their signs in so they comply. We don't want them to stay away with non-conforming signs. And I can't imagine that every single business is going to bring their sign before the commission. It's just, I think that we could put it in there with the provision with no cost and let the council review
The
it.
rest of the commission okay with that?
Yes.
When you say bring in the sign, how about a photograph?
I don't care how you bring it in.
Yeah, that's what
because,
I meant.
mean, the lady's wall down there, she's not gonna chuck that thing in here.
No,
You
no,
know,
that's
you see what
fine,
I'm
that's
saying?
fine.
If Antiques Roadshow came to town, she'd find a way to wheel that thing in
Yeah,
there.
there you go. Do you have any other questions, Commissioner?
No, that was it.
Commissioner Phillips?
I don't have anything.
I have a
I
quote.
have,
Go ahead.
um,
We're going to go over your suggested changes
yeah.
in just a
and
bit.
so, I
Um,
don't have any other comments.
well, go ahead. Commissioner Folsom, any questions so far? Okay, Lisa? Okay, I have one, kind of in the sign vein. I don't see how the number of car trips to a business is covered in this. In other words, you have you said intensity, but if it's an office where they're just doing payroll and maybe having a guy pick up a part or two, that's one thing. If it's one of these places over off of Scott and Bund becomes Bundy over there, where they have 5 acres and he's got, 2 bulldozers and 10 18-wheelers parked on there, and he's hauling sand. There's a lot of truck traffic coming out of there. I don't want that. So what is the verbiage that we can use to address that?
This proposed chapter will not address what you've said. If they have a business that has a lot of trucks in and out, what you mentioned before, this chapter allows it for the 10 years. Gives them that much time in order to come under codes or move out. If you want to create something that deals with a break point of intensity, then that was not something that, well, it was discussed in the idea of minimum size, some of the things that I mentioned in the staff report dealing with minimum size and limitations on various things and impacts to the surrounding properties. That would change very much the character of this
Okay.
chapter.
Okay, yeah, I didn't think of it in that perspective.
I think also that if there's businesses doing that, they've been doing it for the last 6 years, and before that, you don't have to worry about that starting up as a result of this chapter.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Did you have a question?
Well, at the beginning, you asked us to look at specific items.
Mm-hmm.
Is there where are those items at? I was trying to find them in my book.
If you will look on page, give me a second here.
Those are what we're supposed to be going over.
Page 5 of 16, right?
Yes. No, let's see.
7 of 16? Second paragraph from the bottom, under the ABC.
Yes, yes.
So I just want to make sure that we have a discussion on each of those that were your concerns.
Which, on the second paragraph you're saying of 16?
The second to the bottom,
Oh, okay.
second to the bottom.
See, if I see a neutral, now before you.
Right. These are not staff concerns. These are simply points. These are major points in this chapter. And I want to make sure that we've raised those major points to your consciousness, and you get to decide whether you want to discuss any of them.
Okay,
The
because,
question would fundamentally be, just like with your other chapters, if a commissioner has a question with one or the other of these major points, raise it for discussion amongst the full commission. If you don't have a concern with it, don't raise it.
all right, because Mr. Machado from the video, he brought up some concerns, and I noticed that some of the wording was even changed from what was read. It looks like it was cleaned up and shortened, some of the wordage that you read in your staff report at that workshop. You went in and changed verbiage?
I don't
On
believe
our-
we amended any of the language between that workshop and
There was-
what is here.
Okay, I just was noticing that there was, so I was wondering if you had worked on it more because of the workshop?
No.
And made
What
changes?
what the council saw and what the council directed staff to give to the commission, it initiated a code amendment. And to initiate a code amendment in the development code meant a step in the process is your review. They did not change what was in front of them. They did not make suggestions for changes. They did not suggest the commission look at anything in particular. It was staff that says, well, here are X number of
These are the
major
priorities
points
you may
to
wanna
it.
hit.
Okay,
And so these are things that you, if you're comfortable with, great. If you're not comfortable with, debate it.
I do have a couple questions on those, but do you want to hit any of those specifically?
I just was looking at my list, but go ahead on that one. I'm going to see if this paving and the fire department issue is in here.
I would like us to go back, and it actually has to do with page 5 of 6. Is that the one? Yes, page 5 of 6, B, number C. It says, any land use being conducted in a manner or structure found to be a threat to public safety. And
This
then,
is, that's the health and safety one. That was an issue that was debated back and forth quite a bit. If you have a structure that doesn't have a building permit, or it can be identified as being physically unsafe because of fire standards or something else, they have to correct that or stop using that structure.
what if it's a house that they're running an office out of, and it doesn't, for example, have the current sprinkler code, up to code of sprinkler code requirements? We are not going to go in and make them put sprinkler codes in, are we?
We will tell them that they can't use that house as an office because it is not up to building codes and health and safety codes for that residential structure being used for a commercial purpose.
Okay, so this is an important clarification. So if it's a house that is up to code to be lived in,
As a resident,
as a residence, now, older home, I don't know what the cutoff date is for sprinklers, but the newer homes have, I believe that's sprinklers, right? The fire sprinklers requirement?
do require
Yeah, and
single-family
what was-
residences.
So that cutoff date was like what, 2000 or something, 2005?
It was quite a number of years ago.
Yeah,
but-
so let's just say it was 2000. So this house was built in 1990.
Uh-huh.
They've been living in it, and they used the back half to run a construction company office out there. Now, they don't have equipment, nothing, it's an office. They go in to register, they get inspected. Are we, the city, going to say, you now must put in $5,000 worth of sprinklers?
I would think not. But I can't answer,
Well, that's the public safety, that's what I'm getting at.
And that's why I brought up health and safety codes
Health and safety,
earlier.
let's define what health and safety, because the next down here, there's health and safety and public safety. Let's define what we're going to require of them, because this is a huge,
that would be an impossible task because we don't enforce health and safety rules. This is a land use issue. Under your scenario, what would be looked at would be that they've got this dual use of a structure on site. That dual use of that structure would be allowed to continue for the 10 years under this chapter.
Okay.
It would be up to a building inspector or a fire inspector when they went in there, whether this chapter was in existence or not, to look at that and say, you need to do X, Y, and Z in order to make this safe to use in the fashion
But
that you're using
the
it.
fire inspector would never set foot in there, like, he's
They
never gonna
have
come
prop-
into my
They
home.
have the opportunity right
Oh,
now
no, they
to
have the
enter
opportunity, but
property.
I
Right.
have yet to see a fire inspector come into my home,
Mm-hmm.
okay? And the fire inspector's not gonna probably come in their home until they pull this registration. So my concern is, okay, put aside the technical of it, let's just be overall here. Joe comes in, I'm trying to conform, he has 10 years to conform, we're giving that period of time. But he doesn't have sprinklers, so is he gonna be able to keep working and not put the sprinklers in until the end of the 10-year period, or must he put them in immediately?
I
Because it
cannot-
says they must cease if they have outstanding health and safety violations, or it's a threat to public safety.
And that would be a judgment call on the part of that inspector that goes in there, whether it's a building inspector, fire inspector, or other kind of inspector, to make that determination as to whether or not that would rise to the level of being a violation of a health and safety code as opposed to not conforming to a health and safety code.
This could be something that could keep people from coming in, which they're going to be shut down anyway in a year if they don't. So the other question is, do we have any purview to even leave this out? Because we have no control over public safety or health and safety codes as a commission.
Leaving it out in the fashion of this chapter requiring it, sure, leave it out if you want. Then they would be uninformed that when they came to ask for the registration and the inspection, the normal inspection, technically all commercial businesses in the community are required to have an annual inspection from the fire department. So if they've got
So they're going to have it.
they're going to have an inspection.
Okay. So I just want it to be known that this issue was brought up and that is a risk, that if you're going to get a business license and you're going to try and go through this process, there may be unforeseen fees to come up to code that may be required immediately. So I just want that stated from the dais, that the commission has considered that, and that it is part of the requirement it's a necessary evil when going through this.
But it'll be a judgment call on the part of that inspector, because their responsibility is to make that situation safe. If they don't have sprinklers, if they don't have exits 42 inches wide and it's only 36 inches wide, if they don't have, 2 exits out of every single room and so forth, and they've been doing it that way for years, it's a judgment call on the part of that inspector to determine whether it's a safe or unsafe situation to the level where they say, you've got to change things.
Okay, Commissioner Kerwin.
When I read this, it says, found to be a threat to public safety. I don't think they're talking about OSHA standards. I think they're talking about whether their business creates a safety hazard externally to the community. So if you're sitting in your home office without sprinklers, yeah, the prospect of your house burning down and catching another house on fire is public safety. And I think that's stretching the idea here. I think they're talking about if you're doing a business that creates noxious fumes and it's going to make people sick, or you're generating toxic sludge to sell to people in Menifee, those kinds of things are what they're talking about. They're talking about an external threat outside of the business, not OSHA workplace standards. That's how I read that, because it doesn't say, threat to human safety. It's to public safety. Now, if it's just a threat to you, it's not really a threat to the public at all. So that's why I'm fine with that. That's where they're talking about, what we're doing here. Are you running tar off onto another person's property or something like that? That's how I read that. That's why I'm comfortable with the language.
Okay, point taken. So on E, where it says if you have outstanding current health and safety violations, is it correct to state that
If
if they've been cited,
Right, if you've already been put on notice of a health and safety,
it's an
you've got to
immediate...
resolve it.
You have to resolve it, okay. What about existing citations for things like flood control? Or other, there's businesses that have existing citations for that. But it's like a catch-22, because you're giving them 10 years to comply, but here it says they can't get the registration unless they've already taken care of those. But that's for health and safety. But what about non-health and safety issues? That's the whole point, right? They're going to be
Right.
given 10 years.
They are in violation of the underlying zoning district. That's a code enforcement violation. This stays that issue until,
Okay.
for the 10 years.
Wanted to clarify that. Describe what a hold harmless does.
A hold harmless is a legal reference, I don't know if it's a legal term, but it's a legal reference, where it's an agreement that identifies that the property owner, the business owner, acknowledges and takes it upon themselves that if what they do, what they control, the property that they have, causes injury or in any manner, physical, financial, emotional, to somebody else, they will defend the city, they will hold the city financially harmless for defending that, what may be a lawsuit.
Okay.
Basically, if the city is named in a lawsuit because of our issuance of the permit, they're the ones that are supposed to defend it on the city's behalf. And they agreed to not sue us for issuing them the permit.
Okay, okay. We talked about vehicle signage. Okay, that's the big, let's see, Machado, you probably, Lisa, have some questions. Okay, go ahead. I have two others. I need to read it, so go ahead. Did you have a question, Lisa?
Well, I know that Mr. Machado brought up that he was concerned about the paving in the fire department codes. Would they ever be able to become into regulation? Are they excess for some of these businesses? I know that was just one of his concerns when he stated at the workshop.
Yeah, that was exactly my question too. So say they're on a dirt road, they have a gravel coming into their business. The code says you have to have curb and gutter, you have to have a cement,
Apron.
entrance there, and you have to have so many pavement outside, I think it was 100 feet from the entrance, or whatever it is, the code is. Are we going to make them do that?
No, we specifically had that in previously, as I mentioned, to dedicate and improve the public rights of way. That discussion was such that that was taken out. They're required to have, in the same way, if you have a single-family residence and you want to put a third parking space adjacent to your driveway, you've got to pave that parking space. These individuals will be required to put pavement in for those parking spaces.
For additional parking spaces? Or would they, because of ADA parking requirements, all that, that's immediate, right?
Well, the one for the ADA, it's very rare that you're going to have more than one required for an ADA, but yes.
So to use an example, if it's a shop that's doing car repair, and they have a dirt entrance, and they have gravel, and they have a metal building that they're repairing in, they will have to set aside and create a paved area for ADA that's blue marked, has a little sign, says handicap, right? I mean, they'll have to do that immediately. That's correct, okay. But they will not have to pave the entrance or cement the approach and all that.
Right.
Okay.
And remember, the city does not enforce ADA requirements. The city allows individuals to sue that property owner for nonconformance to ADA standards. So if they don't put ADA requirements in, then they just open themselves up for anyone to come in and sue them for it.
Okay. Lisa, did you have another one?
Well, there was one other comment made at that public hearing by Mr. Rick Croy. I think you're here. He talked about the county in Temecula with some horse property and how they came up with a plan with Mr. Perez from the county. And he thought it was a good example, or maybe of something to look at with this same issue, the way that they were handling it. And I don't know if he'd be willing to comment on that a little bit, because it was good information about a one-time, no charge to get these people in compliance, I believe.
That was dealing, however, with the land use issue of equestrian
Right.
activities.
But it was, yes, it was equestrian, but could the idea be used, some of the ideas be used in our land use situation
Some of those ideas are used in this, by giving a period of time, by giving reduced fees for inspections, for a variety of things that are included in this chapter.
Okay, so you just, okay,
I can't give you a point for point where what they allow versus what's proposed in this chapter.
no, not, but it was just the pattern of being the example that they
Right.
were using and.
What they proposed and what they did was come up with a mechanism to allow a specific land use to have a, either to be legitimized or a path to legitimization. It's getting late. What you have in front of you is that. It identifies land uses that are going to be given an opportunity to have a specified period of time to come into conformance, or a long enough period of time to give them the opportunity to go someplace else. But still, to a reasonable level, assures the protection of people that visit that site, work on that site, and that live in surrounding areas of that site or work in surrounding areas of that site from a health and safety standpoint.
Okay, my last question is, I know staff has worked on this for 18 months. We went through a workshop with the council.
Couple workshops.
Okay, a couple workshops, and I noticed that their representative, Mr. Machado, he's not here tonight. So I'm getting the feel that maybe they're feeling okay, some of the business owners with this, and
I
since
would not
staff is-
draw that conclusion from
Okay.
them not being here.
Okay, so, I don't know if it's good to move forward or not. I mean, it's been worked on a long time.
Well, why don't we do this? I'd like to go over Commissioner Phillips' comments and whether we're going to include or exclude them. And then number two, is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? We can reopen the public hearing. If you would like, you can fill out a speaker slip afterwards, but now is the time, or hold your peace, because something's going to happen tonight. Okay, come up, and can I reopen the public hearing or just hear from him? So we'll reopen the public hearing at 8:32, and then Max, go ahead and speak, and then afterwards give a speaker slip to Jen.
My name's Max Wilkie. I've got a small little air conditioning company that I have an accessory building on my property. I've got 2.5 acres. And there's no way I'll come into compliance because I'm not zoned for it. None of my neighbors are complaining. At one time, a neighbor complained about the color of my shed. I said it's painted or a storage container, and that's nothing to do with my business. That's personal stuff because of 2 marriages that got together, and my wife's got too much stuff. I don't store, a small little air conditioning company is all I have come to my residence is a secretary and an estimator. My guys don't make me any money out there. They might stop by and pick up a paycheck once a month or once every one guy, but that's about it. I can never come into compliance. What's that mean for people like me? And I'm sure there's a lot of them like me that are just gonna have to go out of business or something. I purchased a job site trailer that I've plumbed in underground to my septic tank and everything else, and we pay state taxes on it, and so it's a legal thing. But on one report that said I had a substandard mobile home on my property. I don't have a substandard mobile home. It's completely legal, and we pay taxes on it through the state, and whoever came out listed as a substandard mobile home, it's not even a mobile home. Nobody lives in it. It's just an office that I have. So people like me, and I'm sure there's a lot of them, will just have to go out of business, or what? We live in a rural area, it's a dirt road, just me and our estimator and a secretary come there, that's it. They drive up the car, occasionally I'll have a UPS truck deliver, but no materials come to the residents or anything else.
So let me stay up there, Max. So, and under the home business ordinance, he would not qualify because he's using an accessory building, correct?
No, under the new chapter,
The new one.
what's proposed is a home-based business that would allow a certain number of trucks, I think it's 3, 5 employees, use of accessory building, outdoor storage, and so forth. His building and safety issue of whether or not that trailer, that mobile home, that mobile office does or does not meet those standards is a separate issue. The land use activity that he described would more than likely fall under the allowances of the proposed chapter.
So how could someone like him, and I'll have to disclose, he's a friend of mine, but the issue comes to, I don't know how many other businesses that are throughout the city under building and safety. I mean, I see these office trailers on all kinds of places. Do they come up to code as far as
The vast
egress,
majority.
egress, fire safety, all that kind of
Vast
stuff?
majority of them do not. And that's a building and safety issue that is separate from the land use issue. This gentleman, from what he described, would come in after that new chapter is adopted. He would come in and apply for a home-based business application, and if he met all the standards that were listed in that chapter, then he would be issued a business license. He would not be subject to this chapter because it wouldn't apply to him. He would have been legally established as consistent with the underlying zoning requirements of the home-based business and so forth. His issue of the trailer, the RV, the mobile home, whatever it is, that's a separate issue that would have to be handled through building and safety relative to, does it meet their code requirements, building code requirements?
It's licensed by the state of California,
That's not germane to this discussion.
so.
Okay, so,
And, just another question too, and I see a red light, but, I live in a rural area. 2 people come to my office daily. I have since taken well, not to say too much, but I took my dog to a groomer that lived in a tract home. She has a legal city business license because she has no employees. She can have 50 or 100 yapping dogs come to her house and people drive up to her property every day, and she has a legal business. And she lives in a tract home. But I live in a rural neighborhood, and I have 2 people that come to my office, that's it, and mine's not legal. I did a job in the city of Menifee.
okay, that's,
That
we'll go ahead, we get the
couldn't
point.
do it.
We get the point.
So,
So,
That's
The
why we're
issue-
coming
the-
up with the new chapter.
yeah, so
To
the
deal with
issue
this
is,
kind of
he will
issue.
comply under the home business ordinance, but the building and safety is another issue.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's clear for anyone else who this is applicable. Okay, thanks. Well, you go ahead and speak.
Hi, Rick Croy. I live in Menifee. To Lisa's question, and maybe this can help clarify it too, basically what Temecula did is they sort of did things backwards with the equestrian district. Is what happened is that people were running horse boarding facilities because when they purchased their property, it was Ag 1. So anything to do with an animal was allowed. And then what happened is that the zoning changed to rural residential. Well, nobody knew this because there was a horrible notification system. So what happened is the county started to come in and say, hey, we'd like to see your business permits. And this all happened back in the late 90s. So the county came in, started saying, well, let's see your permits. So they'd given them permits that they got from the county, but they were saying, well, this is insufficient because you're zoned rural residential. So what they've done is the property owners have gotten together with the county and sort of did things in reverse. So now they have what's called the equestrian district, so that their land use, they created a specific land use just for these purposes. Maybe it's a good idea that we kind of follow that template and maybe in future discussions, have something called a rural business permit, which would expand the definitions of those land uses, and that's exactly what the county has done, is they've given a list of allowable uses, just like the other uses that we have for commercial or residential, but they're tailored to these types of business. It's a little bit more complicated because you do have several other uses here, but maybe that's the way to go, is to, because the discussion is, and it's correct, no matter what it is, it will never come into compliance with a rural residential zone. So maybe you have to make the zoning come into compliance with the use. It's kind of a reverse way of looking at it, but that's how they solved it, and it goes before the planning commission at the county very soon. And I think it's gonna fly. Thanks.
So, what is the commission's thoughts on that? What do you?
You have the opportunity, when you look at the residential chapter that will come in front of you, same as you're going to have a residential chapter, a commercial chapter, an industrial chapter, to address, to make changes, to establish allowed uses within the tables of permitted uses in those chapters to address this issue. It's a landmine situation, because it's difficult to say this entire district has allowed all these different, one, you're never going to cover all your bases, and two, if you establish it as a permitted use in the underlying zoning, then everybody in that zone is then going to be able to do that activity. So you are not resolving that problem, you are, you're resolving that problem for the moment, but you're adding problems in the future in that use is then going to be able potentially to spread throughout that zone. This approach, taking that kind of information into consideration, is, staff feels, a mechanism that is reasonable and fair and compassionate to give individuals the opportunity to come into conformance over a period of time, or give them enough time to find someplace else to be. Take into consideration as well the new home occupation and home-based business chapter that will resolve a lot of the small business issues that were, like the one that was mentioned, and a lot of this is going to go away.
Mr. Chair, just a reminder that the public hearing is still open, so you may
Oh,
want
I'm
to.
sorry. Okay, if there's no
close
other
that.
speakers, we'll go ahead and close. No other speakers? Talk now or forever hold your peace.
They can talk at the council.
Talk to the council. We'll close the public hearing at 8:42. Are there any other questions or comments from the commission? Oh, we do need to go, I'd like to go over Earl's stuff here quickly. Let's turn to, if there's no other questions, to tab number 3. Earl's stuff's in blue, correct?
No,
No,
Earl's stuff is in yellow and blue.
yellow and blue. Oh, that's scary, because there's a lot of, okay, tell you what, Earl, I am not going to try and read your mind. So why don't you give us the highlights of what you think is the most important to hit tonight that you are willing to die on a hill for?
There is really nothing that I would really want to die on except for that inspection requirement.
Okay, let's
And,
turn to that.
Everything else was basically, I was trying to translate a lot of the language to where the people in the regulated community can read it and understand what they're being required on. The one that I did have a problem with is section 9.54.060.
Lisa brought up a point. There's language that's struck out. Did you strike that out, or is that what the commission already struck out earlier?
No, you've not seen this before. The strikeout is the language that was reviewed by the council that Commissioner Phillips is suggesting be stricken and substituting his language in for it. The
this-
yellow simply is a highlight that identifies that it was Commissioner Phillips's suggestion to strike that language.
You know, I didn't understand that when I read it. I thought just the blue was his changes.
Well, I will endeavor to make it clear in the future.
Okay, go ahead, now 9.54.06.
6. Now, I just had a problem with this inspection coming on just to see whether the guy or the business owner is going to comply or expand his business. And I think that my thinking at that time was
What section are you referring to?
section
Signage?
9.54.060.
Well, it's
What-
stricken out.
Right.
Okay.
What Commissioner Phillips is referring to is the suggestion for an annual inspection. The initial inspection, yes, but the annual inspection, no.
Exactly.
Basically, what's the point behind the annual inspection? To find out if something has changed. Well, if something changes and it's of any real concern, a neighbor is going to see it and call the city, an inspector's going to see it and say, what's going on, so on and so forth. So staff understands the logic behind why bother with an annual inspection and therefore an annual cost for that. If it's not really accomplishing anything more than what would otherwise occur if we went out there and discovered there was a change, we then go, well, you've now got to change it back or you're in violation, have got to stop. So I believe that's the essence of what the commissioner is referring to.
What is the code section, and on not his edits, but on the actual, on pages 1 through 16, where it talks about the inspection? What page is that on?
That is on page 11 of 16.
Okay.
It is where it says, where it calls for annually on the anniversary date of the issuance of the land use and business registration, the Community Development Department shall be permitted to perform an on-site inspection of the property to verify that no enlargement, expansions, intensification, so on and so forth occur.
Okay, so we do
Suggestion
define
would
what
be
the,
to strike that sentence and the reference to the fee.
Right.
you don't want an annual inspection at all. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. And one of the reasons for it is because I believe that, I know I've had to do this with my own business. If I'm going to enlarge or, as I have done, build another structure, I had to get a city permit, and the guy had to come out to do that. I don't see why, having to go through that process, I'm gonna have to redo it again. And so that's where my thinking was, when I said, I don't see where the city is gonna benefit for an inspector taking the time to go out there to see if a guy is expanding his business, with the knowledge that if he's going to expand his business, he still has to come to the city to get the necessary permits. So I'm looking at maybe a duplication of efforts there. And I don't see where the city is going to benefit from us going out there to see whether or not he's added another workbench.
Well, that, number one, that's assuming that everyone's as honest and will get a permit to do things as you are. Some of these people will not. However, maybe we can change the wording, instead of saying annual, that it is complaint driven. Because
But that's already code enforcement, so.
because that's how we are on code enforcement on several issues, that it's complaint driven rather than an automatic, inspection. So what is the downside of not having an annual inspection from staff's perspective?
Simply not having the opportunity annually to make sure that incremental changes are not being made.
Bob, did you have a comment?
Yes, I was going to say, or work that does require permits to be completed out. They may be making changes to their use or adding something into that would require an approval or a permit, and we would not see that, which is essentially the same, I think, what Charles is saying, that those changes, whether they're small or could be large ones too, we may not see. Neighbors may not, complain about it as well. So it'd be something that we wouldn't have a record of on an annual basis, going out and looking at it. But that can happen regardless of whether we have the inspection or not. But
Okay.
that's the essence of it.
Did you have a comment?
We don't require that of post-incorporation businesses. So
Require what?
this annual inspection of activities. So from the same perspective, if a company started in 2009 here in the city of Menifee for one purpose, and then all of a sudden they started doing another purpose secretly in the back, no one would ever know unless it's complaint driven. So why are we treating these pre-incorporation businesses any differently than post-incorporation businesses? And I'm using that as the incorporation date of the city. That's the pre and post-incorporation. And if it seems to me that if these are in residential neighborhoods, if the neighbors don't mind,
Yeah, if they do mind, they'll make a stink.
exactly. But I would think that for the purposes of inspecting the activity of the business, I think we should hold them to the same standard that we hold post-incorporation businesses for that purpose. Nobody comes into my business every year to see if I hired another paralegal. You know,
But the response to that would be, we're giving these businesses special consideration, and part of the cost of that special consideration is the annual inspection.
but it's
And
not related to their compliance with anything. It's the special consideration we're giving them is to come into compliance with some sort of code. Well, let's say they come into compliance and they're signed off and now they've got a business permit. From that day forward, they never get inspected again.
And they're
10
getting no
years.
special privileges.
So, but the special privileges we're giving have nothing to do with the expansion of the business.
Well, it kind of does, because you're saying, based on this ordinance, that you're putting limitations on the future of the business.
Yeah.
You can't grow, you can't do anything more. I mean, it's kind of, like with a CUP, you're also putting limitations on a business,
Correct.
essentially. Are we doing annual inspections with businesses with CUPs?
Code says we're supposed to, but we do not.
There you go.
But code says we're supposed to.
Okay? This will say we're supposed to also.
My concern is, well, I'd like to hear from council first and then Bob again.
Well, I also know that when it comes to business licenses, it's in our code that we do annual inspections as well, or inspections. So this isn't unique. I know that we're starting to consider, for instance, the new massage establishment chapter. That's going to have an annual inspection requirement as well. So it's not that unique to have an annual inspection. And, I mean,
But massages are a little bit special.
I completely agree, but it's within our business license ordinance as well that we do inspections. So it's not unique to do so. It's not picking on anybody. It's completely fair and within the discretion of the commission.
Go ahead, what were you
No,
going to say?
no.
Okay.
Well,
I was just telling
I
Colin, think we need to
respectfully
inspect it.
disagree with that. I can see a difference in a regulatory inspection and something here that's not. Regulatory inspection, from my personal experience, has included health and safety, hazmat, stormwater, and things like that that are really, that if they're unchecked or uninspected, could really have an adverse impact to the community and to the public health and safety. However, an inspection just to see whether a guy has expanded his business, to me, that does not serve any kind of benefit, not only to the city, but to the individual who's trying to get his business off the ground. And so that's why I really, of all of the verbiage in here, that's the one I really have an objection to, because I don't think that that kind of inspection has a regulatory driver as much as it is a subjective evaluation, which may or may not be punitive. And so I'm looking at, I do not have a problem with regulatory-driven inspections, which are already covered by codes. But I do have a problem with somebody just arbitrarily coming in to my place of business just to see if I added another computer or another employee. I have a real problem with that.
I would tend to agree, but we can't take the teeth out of it completely, and therefore the complaint-driven will suffice. And the reason I say that is the guys and gals that run businesses that are dirty, either chemically, vehicular traffic, they're lousy neighbors, they're gonna get complaints. They already do. The ones that are clean and they get along with their neighbors and they're just doing a service, they're not creating problems. I don't want to have this over their head. So, yeah, it's in a bit of a gray area, but we need to look at the spirit of law. Why are we doing this ordinance? Because it's much more, as Charles said, this is much more lenient than any other city has done. So let's take that spirit, and I say we make the inspections only complaint-driven. That's my thoughts. What does the rest of the commission say?
I'd be fine with that.
So,
It's been brought up, yeah, I don't have a problem with that either. I just didn't want it to be an arbitrary thing. I don't mind complaints.
so in
because
essence,
that's how
what
we
you're
roll.
asking for is simply striking the annual inspection out of 060.
I personally am, but Commissioner Sobek and Folsom, what are your thoughts?
I don't have a strong opinion either way. I would lean towards, if you're going to be putting limitations in the ordinance, that you do need to follow through. On the other hand, I don't want to come down too hard. I mean, they've got 10 years, and if the neighbors complain, then the neighbors complain, and it will be less than 10 years.
Okay, Commissioner Sobek?
Well, I kind of feel the same way, and here we want our mom and pop businesses to go forward, but I also believe that if there's not accountability, sometimes people will take advantage of that, and not everyone. You can't lump everyone. There will be the honest people, and those people are always going to comply, but you're going to have those who will try to get away with everything they can. And you talk about businesses who are good for their neighbors or noisy. You know what? There's a lot of business people who work illegally in their homes that are doing illegal things, and they can be the nicest, quietest neighbors because they don't want the attention. And so, I think there needs to be an accountability, but again, I don't want it to be hanging heavy over the small business owners. I don't know, if you know you're going to have an inspection in a year. I worked for the Menifee School District. I had a classroom, and the fire marshal came through, and if our paper was too, you know how you do bulletin boards in classrooms, if our paper was too low to the ground or too high to the ceiling, guess what? That paper came off, and
But
we
this-
had to apply.
You bring up a good question. This does not preclude public safety, fire inspection, or any other inspections, correct?
Great. Health and safety, no.
Health and safety will still occur regardless. This is
Right.
simply land use.
So,
You're not comfortable with it.
If you make it complaint-driven, why would they pay $150? So if you call up a business owner and says, hey, we're going to come inspect your property because we got a complaint, but we need you to pay us $150 before we come out to determine if there is a problem with your property complaint by your
The
neighbor.
inspector will come out whether or not, they'll just be fined $150. It would be some kind of a fee assessed for $150. They'll come, that inspector will come regardless of whether you want to pay $150 or not.
If a violation is found, so if the inspector comes out from the complaint and no violation is found, they don't have to pay the inspector.
I think there's a misunderstanding, and let's clarify. If you're striking, if you're looking to remove the annual inspection, that fee would also be removed as well.
Right.
If there's a complaint, it'd be treated like a
Code enforcement.
Exactly.
Okay.
So there's no charge for that. If there is a violation found, and if they are found to be not in compliance, then they would be cited for whatever that situation is.
Correct.
Okay, can you also clarify then, is this take the place of a business? Does the city of Menifee charge a business license fee?
Yes,
Yes.
it's totally separate from this.
Right,
Okay.
they would still have to pay, there'd still be a
So
business
they have
license.
to pay that as
Yes,
well. Right.
Correct.
Which is $75 or something like that annually.
So let me propose this. From the city's original version, the staff's original version on 11 of 16, 9.54060, if you come down where the word annually is there, if you take out that first caveat, annually on the anniversary date of land use and business registration, and start with, "The Community Development Department shall be permitted to perform an on-site inspection." That's what we're talking about. And then you take out the next sentence, an inspection fee of $150. And then the sentence after that, failing to allow the inspection, take out annual. I think that takes care of all of it. That gives them the power to go in and do an inspection, that takes out the annual enforcement, that takes out the fee, but it still gives them the power to inspect. And I think you can even leave out complaint-driven if they receive, I mean, you can add complaint-driven or not.
You don't need,
I don't think you need to, because that way they can come in for whatever reason with a legitimate
Read
purpose.
the wording again that you were saying. Where are you? What page are you on?
I'm on page 11 of 16 of the,
bottom paragraph.
We can just remove from annually on, because the city, no matter what, would have the ability to go in and talk or inspect, regardless of whether or not it's written into here.
is that, should that be, that's covered by code? I mean, well, this is specifically to see that no enlargement, expansion, or intensification, et cetera. That's specific to this code. That language is specific to this code, isn't it?
Correct, but it's still in keeping with the code. There can't be any expansion of these businesses until they come into compliance.
I'd like to leave that in there just so it's clear, because that's a special power that code enforcement doesn't have in other businesses. And just leaving that, so what I would say is that word annually, cross out that first half of the sentence.
Before you go there, isn't the wording of no expansion, enlargement, intensification in another part, in another definition within this code saying?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So it's not like if we take this out, it's not in the code.
Okay.
Yeah, it's referenced in other areas. But I would like to, I agree with him, take out annually down to inspection, but leave the wording failing to allow an inspection upon complaint or whatever shall revoke their business has been enlarged. City
So you take
review.
out from annually down to inspection, and then failing, pick it up from there.
To allow an inspection upon complaint driven or whatever, would their business registration would be null and void. Because that's the guy who says, nope, can't come in here, I got my license. No, it says in the code here, you have to allow an inspection upon complaint driven. Does that make sense?
As long as complaint-driven is put in there, because that's something that I had completely missed.
Okay.
And the more I hear about that, the better I like it. I still, basically, I don't like that whole section, so, but the complaint is negotiable, and I agree with that.
Do you understand?
Yeah.
Charles?
Yeah, failing to allow a complaint-driven inspection.
Yeah, that's excellent.
And we're going to strike the annually through the annual inspection wording.
I don't feel entirely comfortable with that, because there are often times where the complaints to the city are driven by just neighbor disputes.
Okay.
And maybe they're completely unfounded, and maybe there's miscommunication, and I don't want this to lead to an automatic revocation of it.
Okay. So how would you word it?
Leave out complaint-driven, and that way the city can vet whatever the complaints are and decide whether or not to make an
I mean,
inspection.
I just think that,
Well, isn't there wording in another section that says failure, or what other section talks about you cannot intensify, modify, or enhance? And in that section, does it say if you do, your business registration is revoked? Where in the code, where's the rest, the other part? where it
Page
says-
before.
Page what?
D, the page, so 10 of 16.
10 of 16.
D,
D.
by requesting, blah, blah, blah.
Business owner shall not enlarge, expand, intensify without first receiving review.
Right.
First review.
So if they enlarge without receiving review, they're in violation of that chapter.
so
that
I
section.
would, once again, recommend, just from annually on, that whole thing could be
Okay.
deleted, and it's covered within other provisions.
It's covered
of this.
within D, what we wanted to accomplish. Okay.
That's fine.
I'm okay with that. Any other changes?
With the exception of what you've already suggested relative to signs, and there being a mechanism for the commission to review on a request basis.
On the signs?
Right.
Okay. And we're striking the annual inspection wording?
Mhm.
Okay. So are we comfortable enough with this to take a vote?
Just some minor stuff here. Page 9 of 6, E. I think you've got a couple extra comments that you don't need. After environmental, there's a comma. You're talking about environmental citations.
Oh, yeah, it should be, the comma should be after citations, not after environmental.
And in that third line there, citations or are in violation of any current health.
Let's say it again, the. Oh, or are in violations instead of be.
Right.
So are, okay.
And then again, that, at the end of that sentence there, or at the end of that line, there's another comma after environmental before regulations. That shouldn't be there.
Okay. So if there's no other comments, edits, or changes, I'm comfortable passing this ordinance knowing, and I want this for the record, that the home occupation ordinance is coming before us, which will resolve a lot of concerns that have been expressed tonight
Mhm.
and protect business owners otherwise. So do we have a motion to, so what are we, we're not passing, we have a motion to send this to the,
Your motion is to adopt the resolution 15-208 as presented within the staff report and as amended by your comments tonight.
so do we have a motion to adopt resolution PC 15-208 as amended? And tonight, who would like to make that motion?
I will make that motion to adopt PC
Resolution,
15-208.
15-208 as amended by the commission's comments tonight and recommended to City Council.
do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, do we need a roll call?
Yes, please. Commissioner Folsom,
Yes.
Commissioner Carwin,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes?
Vice Chair Sobek,
Yes.
Chair Thomas.
Yes. So if there are any other comments, changes that the public wishes, there will be a council meeting in a month? What,
Yes, approximately a month.
about a month? That's the time and place to do it, and suggest any other further changes. Okay. Do we have, there's no discussion items, do we have, Bob, do you have any Community Development Director comments?
I don't, Mr. Chair, but this evening, our Jonathan Smith is with us, and you had a question with regards to, I think, the bridge, or some of the transportation improvements, and
Okay.
I asked Jonathan, and he graciously agreed to come here and provide a quick, brief overview on that, to address that question I think you asked
Thank you for
2 or 3
coming.
meetings ago.
Oh, my pleasure, Commissioner.
So,
Go ahead.
So, again, I can address any specific questions that you have regarding the capital improvement projects. I'll just briefly go over the update of what we call the Big Seven, which are located in the trifold, excuse me, that we mailed out shortly after our CIP program was established in April of 2013. As all have heard and probably have attended, we had the groundbreaking for the Newport Road Interchange project. That project is underway. The work that is being done now is in preparation to cause havoc out there. So in 2 weeks, everyone will see the results of all the work that is being done to prep for the work. Looking forward to that.
The expected completion date?
Expected completion date is about 18 months. Yeah, and that's barring any unforeseen circumstances. So my department will be working on this project on a daily basis to make sure that the project stays on schedule. And hold on, sit tight. It's going to be a wild ride, because not only do we have the interchange project that is happening maybe as early as Monday, Menifee, what is it, the Town Center Marketplace there, where the future Sonic, I believe, is going to be, and other businesses are going to be located there in our new Town Center project. We'll be start grading Monday, next week at the latest.
I was
That's
actually
that
going to ask you
corner,
that tonight.
corner, right?
In that corner right there, right next to Paloma Wash, where the hot air balloons have been landing lately. So that's going to start up. Shortly after that, right here in the center of Han, Menifee Union School District project, that will start. At the same time, Menifee Plaza, where it's located adjacent to the 215, where LA Fitness is going to go, that will be under construction.
When are they gonna start that?
Mhm. Yes, yeah. Their goal is, the owner of the gas station is anxious to get that started and going.
In a month, 2 months?
Well, I've been given, I've been told we're gonna start next week. I did talk to Tab Johnson, I'm sorry, not Tab Johnson, I talked to, the owner, Lou Miramontes. He had indicated that they were gonna get started within the month, which would be May.
Excuse me, when he says start, are they just going to be, are you aware if they'll be starting just the gas station or both the gas station and the fitness center?
They're gonna focus on that gas station site first, and then they're gonna move over to the LA Fitness, site as well, at the same time, the hotel site. The owner of that hotel site wants to start getting his site prepped. So it's going to all be moved fairly quickly.
But they don't have a hotel.
They don't have,
yet.
no, but they can do the grading and they can
Pad
get the
and
pad ready in preparation for bringing information to you for however that process is going to work out. But as far as getting the pad ready, they're moving they're talking about moving quite quickly. So that's just the development in this area, and I think there are a couple others that are floating around the tire center that'll be happening next door here. Planning has a better feel for that. But as far as my department, they're the ones that are getting out of the gate with grading permits. And on top of that, we have Town Center proper, which is the other side of Paloma Wash, where Kokorian's going in and other uses are going in. That developer is moving along to get final grading going over there. I'm talking about Kokorian. So there's a lot of activity right here. And on top of that, we have Bradley Road Bridge, which is in final design.
Is that at Bradley and the Wash right there?
Bradley and Salt Creek.
Salt Creek.
Yeah. And the idea behind that design is to, what we've attempted to do is to make that almost a cookie cutter design so we can use it further down on Murrieta, where Murrieta crosses the Wash. So kind of two birds with one stone. Just got to find some of the funding for that.
Anything on the Stater Brothers Shopping Center?
Stater Brothers,
Nothing
nothing new on that.
It's still going through litigation.
So,
That could take a long time.
Johnson? Is that the Johnson litigation or something?
Yeah, I think,
I have to defer to the city attorney.
The
for-
Diamond Brothers lawsuit. It's still ongoing at this point, so.
Is it EIR CEQA-based?
Yes, it's CEQA-based, so no other update I could really give at this point.
they want to drag that out.
But what I can talk about are the improvements that are going to go in on the Newport Road area, which we've talked about, the traffic signal, and the new traffic signals that are going to go in along Newport. What our department is doing is we're working on putting together an area within our traffic department that's going to allow us to communicate with those signals and control them and coordinate them. So at peak times when we know that there's a problem, it gives us the opportunity to adjust the timing to allow the traffic to clear. And that's what I stated in my presentation to you that we would do. And I think once that comes to light, people understand better on how that's going to function along there. And we're working on that right now.
Stater Brothers, where we had them put the light on Newport, remember, they were.
That light will be
Council,
included.
did it stay? Did it,
Did the light stay?
Yeah.
Yes, the light,
Okay.
the traffic signal is part of that project. So, but independent of that specific light for that project, we are interconnecting all the traffic signals along Newport from end to end. So we'll be able to control all of the lights plus the new one that'll go in, which will alleviate some of the concern about how those lights work along that corridor.
Are you going to have traffic cameras or anything to be able to visualize?
Yeah, they're going to be traffic cameras. So, Bradley Bridge, as I mentioned, is under final design. I believe the other hot topic is Holland Road overpass. And I'm happy to say that that is really moving nicely. That's moving through Caltrans. Caltrans has been very cooperative to me, and I appreciate that. They have a streamlined process, which this project did not really fit, but I pleaded our case and they acquiesced, and we're under a streamlined process to get that
funding
completed.
for it?
We currently on the books, I have the funding for that. So
Scott Road funding?
Scott Road interchange project, I have a meeting tomorrow at Caltrans. We have most of the right-of-way necessary for that. The plans are 98% complete. The only piece that's missing is the aesthetics portion, which we just wrapped up those pieces with the Newport interchange project, and we're going to cookie cutter that to Scott Road. Our goal is to have that shovel ready here, hopefully by October. It should be before then, and then we'll be positioned to go after the next round of funding. Right now, there's not a definite date for a call for projects where funding will be available for me to compete for.
Is that through WRCOG?
That's
or-
through WRCOG, correct.
So we don't have the funding yet, but you're going for, okay.
It's not fully funded. We have the funding to do the design, we have the funding to acquire the right-of-way, and then we have a few dollars left over to throw at construction. We're working collaboratively with the county on finding ways to gather all the money that we have around to throw at the construction. Juan Perez has been very helpful to us, as well as some other resources there that we're working with. I'll tell you, it's challenging. It's going to be challenging, but I believe that we got a good team put together, and it's going to be hard for anybody to say no.
Now, the junction hasn't paid any fees yet, right?
Well,
Isn't that-
as far as what,
as
mitigation fees to
Yeah,
offset?
TUMF and any other fees that would contribute towards the bridge?
The junction has not moved forward yet to be able to pay those fees, but they will pay those fees regardless. Kind of the leader in the pack right now is the Walmart project. What was not happening and what was causing, I believe, just some stagnant, that was really stalling the process. The projects were not connected. They were not, the different stakeholders were not communicating. So what I did is I brought in the junction, I brought in the Commerce Point people, they happened to be the same developer, Pac 10, got Walmart together, got the county together, and we started comparing notes and plans and found some differences and started ironing those items out. And now we're going in a positive direction that will facilitate not only the interchange project, but the junction and Walmart all together to move forward. So let's just keep our fingers crossed. I'll let you folks know when we're going to go out when I'm going to go out and fight for money with the other directors, and you can keep me in your prayers. But that project is in good position and moving forward quite well. I don't want to leave out the fact that the Public Works Department has out on the street right now a project, part of the pavement management program that we have to keep up our streets in the city. And it's an area that's located just south of Scott on it's actually on the east side of Scott, the very south part there. Some of our worst paved roads there. I
Right.
apologize, I don't have a map
Right,
here.
just past, in front of J-Bar and that way? Or you say it's east side of Scott, east of the freeway?
It's south of Scott, east of the freeway, yeah. So if I had a map here, I could show you, but it's a nice little area out there that has some older paved roads with no curbs, gutters, or anything like that, almost like a Quail Valley situation. And we're going out there and getting those streets up to snuff. And then in a couple weeks, we'll be going out with another pavement management project, which will be in Canto Road from McCall south all the way to the very end there. I apologize, I forget the name of the street. But right there in front of the apartments that went in, we're taking care of a situation that, for whatever reason, happened before me, that the project wasn't conditioned to take care of some of the issues out there. So it was left to us, and we're using the money that the developer paid for his diff to fix those issues. At the same time, we'll be fixing the traffic signal there at McCall and in Canto to function a little more efficiently. So all that is going on at the same time that we're managing all these construction projects.
I hate to even ask, with everything that's going on, with Newport Road over here.
What portion
How it
right
becomes
here?
a dirt road right out here, when you come out and turn right, come out of Hawn, you turn right
Uh-huh.
between there and Bradley Road.
Uh-huh.
It's practically a dirt road over there. That's
Yes,
part of our
yeah.
EDC. Is that on
Yeah.
the agenda at all?
So, good question. There is a project on the books right now, Newport Road Improvement Project. We did the east side, so that was practice. Now we're going to do the west side from Hahn to Bradley.
That's practice.
So, the goal is by the time that Corian is in, then I'll be able to get that road nicely done, nicely looking from Menifee all the way to Bradley. So,
Include that hiccup we got down there?
yeah, that hiccup right there is actually going to be solved by another tire center that is in the works.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I thought that they went away. They came back, they submitted plans, they're gonna do the right thing.
The one where they crammed everything in on that lot? I'm just wondering, did he come back?
I don't know the details of the project, I'm just happy what they're doing out in the roadway, so,
Is
but,
it Winterhawk?
no,
This is before winter.
yeah. It's that little pop out that creates the whole
They have
bottleneck.
a little
Once I
homeless
get that,
encampment there.
right. But that's going away.
Good.
And then when that goes away, that gives us a clean shot all the way down Newport. And I'm going to do some striping that'll allow us to get all of our lanes in. And that should really facilitate the traffic flow through that area. But hopefully, we'll get a nice finished product out there. That's the goal. So wish me luck.
Okay, thank you, Jonathan. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Drink some of that coffee there.
We had a good meeting in Quail Valley, and that's why I was late, by the way, just,
Very good. Any other commissioner comments or questions or staff or anything?
Nope.
Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Before you adjourn,
Yes.
a suggestion from staff.
Yes.
You have a fifth Wednesday next week, and it's 9:30. If you are willing to come to a special meeting, workshop next Wednesday, you could get through the EDC. We could then have a public hearing before the Planning Commission, the second meeting in May. You could also have a workshop for May, the second meeting in May. for your home occupation, home-based business.
I'm open to that. Is the rest of the commission
Because
open?
it doesn't look like you're real enthusiastic about getting back to the EDC chapter tonight.
You're right.
You're right, you're right.
But that, I had to tell you before you adjourn so that you could adjourn to that special meeting. As long as there's not
Is there
some
not-
other,
Is there enough time to,
oh, there's no need for advertisement or anything. It's a workshop.
Oh,
So all you
okay.
just do is post the agenda, the appropriate amount of time ahead of time, and we reserve the room, but there's no council meeting or anything. Like I said, it's a fifth Wednesday of the month, and so it should be free.
Are you okay with that, Bob?
That's fine.
I won't be here. I'm out of town next Wednesday.
I only see 4 Wednesdays in May.
This is April.
April?
Talking about
Right.
next.
Oh, you're talking about this month?
Next
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Oh, I thought you were talking about a 5th Wednesday in May.
No,
No,
next week.
Yes.
Talking about next week.
Next Wednesday,
Next Wednesday?
Correct.
29th?
7 days.
I
Or
could
we
do
could
that.
finish it tonight.
We're not going to finish it tonight.
Oh. There's a will, there's a way.
I'm fine with next Wednesday.
I'm kidding. I'm partially kidding. Gotta push.
I believe I will be here, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, I can tell you right
What's that date?
29th?
29th.
29? I was scheduled to be doing nothing on that date.
Well, you sit here and do nothing.
You got that
could
right.
sit here and do nothing.
Well, I could work on this new one that you're going to send me.
Yeah, we also, you'll get the chance to review the food, the cottage food operations again.
Yeah, I just
That's
finished
one we're-
my course in that.
Yeah, we're putting finishing touches on that chapter.
Okay.
You are working on the animal chapter.
Yeah, I'm
We've got to
still
do that.
fighting that.
We have several chapters that are in the mix and nearing completion, so we do
Yeah.
need to roll on some of these, but you also need to be fresh enough to truly contribute to the discussion.
I'm okay with it if everyone else is okay.
Okay.
So we will see you next Wednesday.
Then you would adjourn to a special meeting of Wednesday. I'm looking at the deputy clerks for guidance. Okay.
Do we have a motion to adjourn to next Wednesday?
Will that be a 7 o'clock?
Can we make it 6 o'clock, same as a workshop for consistency's sake?
That would make the
Yeah.
most sense.
I'm trying to get here by 6. I apologize for being late. I drive from Riverside, so I break most speed laws for you, but
Mhm.
I can only do that so much. So,
Can I just leave my notes with someone to?
Absolutely. Send it to staff and we'll distribute it to the full commission.
All right.
and then we have a motion to
It has to-
adjourn. Do we have a second? Who did it first?
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.